Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Deepest Lore. We are live as things stand, I hope. This week and next week, international superstar rule breaker, we could say, Simon Horus is away for 2 weeks. So we've brought in from the depths of the roster back once again. It's been a while. It's Panama Hat. How you doing, Panama?
I'm very, very well, thank you. It's very nice to be back, especially on such a curated show. One of the last good things worth watching on YouTube in this age of slop.
Oh, here.
Very, very nice to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Deepest Lore veteran, Panama Hat. All these Johnny-come-latelys, they might not know who you are, Panama. But
no. I mean, I was on one of the original Deepest Laws to talk about Thomas Carlyle's Chartism in 2019. So we're going back quite some time there.
OG.
It was T.S. Eliot Deepest Law as well. It was a great one.
Oh yes. Of course, the Mr. D. T.S. Eliot Deepest Laws. Also the Muppets. I think that was Deepest Law. I was hoping you'd have some sort of arcane, obscure wrestling term for this late comeback, this unexpected career comeback.
Well, it's I mean, it happens a lot. It's and usually what happens is there's a nostalgia pop. Crowd goes wild. Panama Hat is back! Yay! And then after a couple of weeks, it was like, oh yeah, he's old now. Oh, I'm fed up with this. That's what happened to Mr. Perfect in the 2001 Royal Rumble. Like, Mr. Perfect's back, yay! And then like 2 weeks later, it's like, yeah, this guy's old.
Well, I look forward to being old after 2 weeks. That would be nice.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of wrestling, I mean, another thing they used to do is back in the day, the NWA champion would be a heel typically, but sometimes it was a babyface champion. It was a hero champion. But when they traveled to a town to face the local hero, it would be a face versus face match. And the champion would drop into what they called playing the subtle heel. And in the absence of Horus, I thought today I might have a go at playing the subtle heel, Simon Roberts, bringing up my Mises libertarian talking points, things like that. Just so his presence is not missed too much.
See, I'm convinced he's been slipping into Ash Sarkar's DMs because I was obviously, plugging for her to come on, but she's gone mysteriously quiet in the last couple of days, and I'm sure they're enjoying an illicit weekend somewhere, chatting about communism.
Okay, yeah, we are a little bit later than usual today, so people are trickling in at a slower rate than usual. I would say. But before we get going, I'll remind people, buy courses, etc. Trivium, the bestseller. Hat, where can people find you these days?
Well, as ever, there's still my infrequently uploaded to YouTube channel, Panama Hat. And I've just, in the last 2 days, gone back on Twitter. But that's entirely for personal reasons. I'm not going to be posting much on there. So at Panama Hat if you want, but there's that's mainly just an account to follow and to lurk as opposed to post. So
can I just compliment you, Panama, on your excellent video which I watched this morning, and it's we often lament the loss of the video essay, but this is on another level. This is also the audio essay. This is very radiophonic, this thing that you've just done. great video. I loved it. It reminded me a lot of things, but go and watch it, people. It's about the, as Adam would say, the problem of our time, which is especially in our sphere. It's in a sense, it's quite eerie. The way it's done. I love the music. I sort of want to ask you what it is, but I'm not going to ask you what it is. But it's about living a life in the space where a life should be, really. A lot of people on the fringes, especially in politics, are doing it, sort of waiting and anticipating for the thing to happen, the thing that's never going to come.
Being stuck between ages, as it were. I mean, that I didn't bring up Godot because I thought it was too obvious a reference, but the last lines of it where it says, shall we go? Yes. And then it says, they do not move. It was that kind of thing. I think that kind of sums up our little zeitgeist in this corner of the world.
It's great listening. I love the radiophonic quality of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, one of my main secret ambitions in life, never to be realized, is to just be a Radio 4 host. I would love to just make Radio 4 programs all day, but maybe one day.
This channel has always been called, in the tagline, if you go on the About section of the Academic Age on YouTube, it still says, and it has done for the entire running time of this channel, 10 years now, it's called Radio 4 for woke people.
Which a lot of people still don't understand, I think.
No. Well, they probably can't remember when woke was used ironically by the dissident right back in the day. They probably they probably weren't even sort of right wing until George Floyd or something. They don't remember the old days.
Yeah, I've got to ask AA. Just in the last week or two, do I recall or not recall? Did we talk about there was recent sabotaging of the compost? The official government story is that a man, probably foreign, may have subverted the compost heap. There are questions about whether he is some kind of asset of an intelligence agency, possibly Iranian. I don't know.
Trotskyite wrecking.
Yeah.
Well, my parents came to stay at the lodge because we had this party thing to go to last week. Was it that last week or the week before? And they were also flying from Gatwick, so they often say, "Oh, we're coming up this weekend," kind of. And my dad has this habit of just taking it upon himself to do things without asking. Like for one time, for example, I went outside and found him sawing in the decking. Right, he literally just started sawing lines in the decking. I was like, "What are you doing?" But basically he was like, "Yeah, if I don't do this, the drainage won't go down properly, and I'll end up rotting the wood." But he didn't ask. Was the point. And he took it upon himself to do sweep up some leaves, and then he dumped all the leaves in the hot bin, wet after a rainy day. So I was very upset about that. So I got them all out of it again. Unfortunately, Simon, the hot bin it's having a rough winter. I'll just put it that way. It's just been cold, never stops raining, and it's just it's on hiatus at the moment. I can't do anything about it.
Okay. So, well, there you go, folks. It was a single lone leaf man. There was no triangulation of crossfire.
Funny enough, the next day, two Irish fellas came through, and they were like, "Oh, we're currently doing cleaning of moss and treatment." Right, and my dad's always going on about, "Oh, you need to get the wood treated." So they came and they did. They were here for 3 or 4 hours, cleaning the roof and doing all the sides of the walls and the decking and all of that. I mean, it does look brand spanking new now, which is quite nice. But it led to an absolute nightmare, Simon, because my phone is broken at the moment.
Yeah.
So it resets every 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes it reboots, and I should really just buy a new. I tried to go and get it fixed, and the guy in the store was like, "Look, you're gonna have to get a new phone." I've had it for 5 years. I mean, it's to put it in context, it's the same phone with the yellow cover that I had all those years ago. It's the same.
I remember it well.
So anyway, it's buggered basically, And I tried to do a factory reset to try to resuscitate it. That means I had to re-download a lot of my apps, including my banking app. Okay. Well, these guys have come to do this job, and obviously I don't have cash on me, so I tried to do it through a bank transfer. It wouldn't put the payment through because it was like I just reinstalled the app. So to them, it looked like you understand the issue, right? It looked like, oh, could be a stolen phone or something. Why is he trying to put this big payment through to an absolute stranger when he's just downloaded? So they wouldn't put the payment through. Right? And then they put a block on the entire bank account. So they rang me up, and I was like, "What are you doing?" The guy was standing in the room with me, and I can't do this transaction. Right? This was literally the bank getting in the way of a guy I was trying to pay who was there. So obviously I had to tell him. So then I had to take a day out, go all the way to Richmond, to the one bloody bank that's still open in like a 20-mile radius. Okay. Then they unlocked it. Then I had to get the money out. Then I had to meet the guy in like the car park of a Lidl, right, with a massive wad of cash to pay him for this job he'd done. It couldn't have looked more dodgy.
No,
it was just like, oh, it's bizarre. It was just.
I mean, also you're giving cash to pikeys there. I mean, I had that exact thing. A gang of them tried to bilk £800 out of a female relative, and I happened to be arriving at their house right as these pikeys were finishing. And they claimed that what they'd done is they'd pressure washed all the moss away, and then put this magical treatment chemical down that would prevent moss growing again. And I just said, "Well, no, you haven't. No, you haven't, have you?" And then there was an argument, and what I did is I pretended to be a lawyer. And at the mention of the lawyer, I was wearing a suit, so I just said, "Look, I'm a lawyer," and they accepted kind of 40 quid and went home.
You see, the way you dress, Panama Hat, with the typical elegance you have, they probably thought you were like Don Fanucci from Godfather 2.
Well, they probably thought I had my own, rival gang of pikeys doing the same job somewhere in the area,
I can see you flicking the ash off your cigar casually as you tell them what's going to happen to them.
I've done it. I mean, when you have to kind of have these things done every like 5 years or so. Otherwise, it does cause a problem with rotting and things. So you have to get this straight. So the job they did was legit. Okay, the job they did was legit, but the sheer ball ache that was, and it was all because, right, you're just not allowed not to have a phone. This is the problem. I was talking about getting a Nokia brick, Simon. Okay,
yeah,
it's like the world won't let you. It's like, I mean, there's another thing. My daughter's homework has to be uploaded, right? And there's this app. There's no desktop version of that app. Or to book onto my gym, it's an iPhone app, but there's no desktop version of it. So
excuse me one moment. I just have to nip out.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. Simon also has an appointment with some pikeys, doesn't he?
He does. Yes. They're going to spray his motorbike. Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you do about this? Because I want to not have a phone, so I'm not on Twitter, so I don't have to, so I can step out of the slop matrix as per my articles, Panama, right? But it's like the world won't let me not have a fucking phone.
Yeah. I mean, I sympathize with this because about a year ago, my mobile phone was up for an upgrade. And I thought, I'd already kind of got rid of Twitter for the first time. I thought, well, why not? I'll just get rid of it all. I'll finally disengage from it all and just, log in occasionally on the old PC and do that kind of thing. So I upgraded my phone to a Nokia flip phone that they had on offer, and it was like, you had to kind of go all the way to the bottom of this list of 100. Huge Chinese smartphones to get to this little Nokia flip, and I did upgrade to it. And unfortunately, I have to confess, I'm still using the phone that I had pre-upgrade now because as you say, I mean, the biggest issue is banking, is that all the local banks have closed. They've taken away the local branches. you know, I need to check and do banking a couple of times a week at least, just to be able to live. You know, and sometimes I need to do it when I haven't got access to a PC. You know, and that's just that. So I mean, you could arguably do without the social media, but things like banking, you're forced to have a smartphone. I mean, you know, I mean, there are even some services, some restaurants and things that, you know, you have to get an app and do, you know, online stuff, or you know, be able to you're right. It's increasingly difficult
Another thing,
to operate without it.
since they brought in two-factor authentication, you can't fucking do anything on your PC, right?
Yeah.
You can't do a banking transaction. You can't log into your bloody emails. I can't log into my YouTube account. I can't do anything without my phone.
Yeah.
Oh, so irritating.
It always tells you those lies about, well, we'll text a code to your phone to allow you to get back in, and you wait and the code doesn't come. And then you get it to do it again, and it sends you the code, and you put the code in, and it says, oh, well, we can't make that work. We'll have to do it by another method anyway. You have to sort of do some.
Feel like a digital prison, does it not, Simon?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had a friend who's in a very fortunate position of being able to buy a house recently, but the level of difficulty of getting at your own money to make a transactional exchange in the current situation is impossible. You know, it's like being Joseph K in the trial.
I had the same sort of experience trying to make it was on a day where I'd made a property transaction and had quite a lot of money going in and out. Then later that afternoon, I went to buy a burger for about £9, and I put the card in the thing and pressed the pin button, and then my bank actually deleted the account for security reasons. So they were quite happy for all this money to transfer, but this kind of £9 must have been the straw that broke the camel's back. So I then had to spend 3 days on the phone to the bank getting the account restored, because it was completely locked out. It was frozen. They'd taken it off the app. They took it off all the online banking. So the only way to get to it was to actually ring the bank. And you know how hard that is, you know, to actually get through to a human being. It was ridiculous. I mean, thankfully, I didn't have any, you know, really important things to pay for in the next few days. But it was just
why is it you unreasonably want access to your own money, Panama?
I know.
What kind of awkward person are you?
Well, I mean, I think we should head back to those sort of old women from the Depression era, you see, where they keep all their money under the mattress, you know, or in a tin, you know, because if you've lived through the crash of '29, where all your money just gets vanished because the banks are doing, you know, fractional reserve, you know, you just don't trust them ever again. So you keep all your money in cash or in gold or something.
I literally know people who are asset managers for actual funds of millions, who actually just keep a shopping bag under the bed with gold and silver in.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Makes sense.
So there it is. You're basically not allowed not to have a phone. And tell you what, my bank are just psychopaths when it comes. They think every single tiny little thing. I mean, in a way, it's good because they're like pie hot, but they're like too efficient. They just get in the way of everything. They think everything is. They're like hyper vigilant about fraud.
Yes. Yes. They rang me once and said, oh, are you in Manila today? And I said, no, I'm in Camberwell. And they said, oh, somebody's using your card in the Philippines.
Wow, there we go. They caught it. They caught that person.
Well, that was good. Yeah. But when I wanted to transfer a sum of money to buy a house, they were charging me for the pleasure. And I said, well, if it's all electronic and all of this, you know, I can do my own online banking. In principle, it's the same, isn't it? Why are you wanting to charge me 30 quid for access to my own money? You've never done anything for me.
All right. So shall we make a start? It's Can't Get You Out of My Head, part 12 in terms of our episodes, but episode 4 in terms of Kurto's episodes. Any kind of pre-show notes on this one?
Yeah, I found an interesting interview with Curtis, a BFI article in Sight and Sound that he did a few years ago when the series came out. And he was saying a few interesting things, and I'd just like to just read a little bit of it. Obviously, in the spirit of this moment, this resonates greatly with us. He said, there's a great hunger for change, a yearning. You can feel it. But then no one seems to be coming up with any alternative visions of a future that really grabs you. So this is familiar, Curtis complained. And he talks about focusing on this character, Jiang Qing, Mao's wife. And he says she was an ambitious person who'd been scorned and put down by the men in the Shanghai studios and then in the revolutionary camp. But when she got power, it came out in a vengeful way. I think this is an interesting resonance for now, because it's kind of this warning that, you know, we've been talking about a lot recently, is that you may achieve this sense of power and then it can turn into this kind of psychopathy that we see manifesting in recent stories. And Curtis goes on, he says, that's really interesting because it's exactly what we've been talking about, how ideas go into someone's head, get mixed up with ghosts from their own pasts. In Britain, the deference, the snobbery, the class anger, the dreams of and melancholy about empire, and come out in strange, malformed ways. And when I read this, I listened to your talk. I was very interested in your talk with Alex Masters. And he was literally saying something else that follows on from this, that Curtis goes on to say. He says, let's look back at why past attempts to do that, i.e. change the world, failed. He says, one of the fundamental reasons is that the mistake people make in the age of the individual was to think that you could change things without taking account of what is inside people's heads, the old ideas they've inherited from the corrupt world that you're trying to change. I don't think they're pessimistic. I think they're trying to confront these issues, which the left and the progressive movement have shied away from and retreated into an individualism because they couldn't think of the answer to it. You know, so Curtis is often talking about, you know, an age of mass democracy, and it's fine. You know, we don't necessarily believe in democracy as a operational relationship any longer. You know, we press the button, but nothing happens, as they say. But it's still the operant idea that the mass of people still believe in, you know, because you can't find a way to unwind the sunk cost of changing that idea in people's heads without causing people, you know, psychic trauma. You know, what did Blonde in the Belly of the Beast say? She said most people don't have the mental architecture to do that. Yeah, you know, because the reality is where we are at this sort of moment, almost schismatic moment in the online right. The problem is people aren't sitting there thinking about the UK meme. They're living in it. Yeah, they don't have this kind of postmodern reflexivity exercise going on.
Sorry to cut off this wonderful monologue, Simon.
No, go ahead.
Sensible centre left, if you please.
Sensible centre left, quite right.
But carry on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there I was living with the ghosts of the old ideas in my head. You see, that's exactly the problem I'm talking about. You know,
ontology.
But exactly. But I don't. As I say, people don't think about the UK in this kind of postmodern reflexive way. You know, where you're critiquing the political artificiality. And you're thinking about uniting with the people in your village, you know. I mean, the problem is the people in the village are all still isolated by the processes of life, you know, work, school, shopping, recreation, you know, and the human tendency to sort of block out and recompensate with other things, you know, like self-medicating and distraction and cope, you know, and the big narrative that's still locked in their heads, emotional narratives, you know. So what they don't have is a sense in this moment of someone sort of with a project that's bridging the sense of powerlessness they have with more than just what we see on the online space, which is just enthusiasm, basically. You know, there's no kind of big money in our system, you know, where we're sort of able to offer an alternative, you know, and what it sort of requires is a kind of signal jamming to real power. You know, I mean, Curtis acknowledges this. He talks about the left and he says, look, this is, you know, 15, 20 years old, this sort of discussion on the left. They know that they can't compete with the narrative of nationalism as bringing people together. But the problem is the strength of the inhibiting programming in our society at the minute means that nationalism just kind of gets used as a sort of soporific political pheromone to sort of lure people over to the political predator. Looking at you, Nigel, which doesn't really believe in it in order to be captured and to sort of come into the orbit of actual power. Yeah. Yeah.
Or, I mean, see, this is the thing I wonder with Trump, not to get too bogged down in current slot, is that is the American system using Trump to do stuff that it kind of wants to do but couldn't usually get away with under the remit of, oh, well, it's Trump, right? Or is this like actually happening for real, for real? Do you know what I mean? Because there's something about the kind of under the hood continuity that Brian Baletic talks about that I can't unsee. And I also then just be like, well, is this a way of just like transitioning certain amount of Americans into a mindset to achieve some objective in the short term? You know, maybe a sense of jingoism, maybe a sense of cultural chauvinism, maybe, you know, getting up for one last war or something. But this is why I've always been kind of a little bit skeptical about nationalism writ large, because it's almost always a trick in this way. You know, it always seems to like be used to some ends for a brief period of time.
Yeah, it becomes, like I say, it's like a pheromone. It's like an artificial scent almost that's put out. You know, and Curtis talks further about this. He talks about retreating into culture, which you've talked about before with Toynbee. And there's this moment where the sort of the sentiment that comes with this resurgent, I don't want to say nationalist politics, but this radical right politics, where there's a lot of re-celebration of culture, a lot of, you know, look what they took from you and all of that stuff, which I think is very tired now, you know. And he talks about this. He talks about those who retreat into culture haven't got the answer. They dance to the radical music and say the radical things and go and see the radical films, but maybe the power is moving away from them, and it's a very difficult thing to face up to. And he talks about, you know, how there were these great big novels in the 19th century, you know, by Thomas Mann, Buddenbrooks, and it was charting the sort of chronicle of the Hanseatic merchants, and, you know, it was about the class beginning to decline. And there's a sort of danger we're sort of tripping over that invisible line where these things are sort of creating the aura of potentiality for change, but actually secretly, as you say, power is drifting somewhere else because it's already captured a sensibility that's in the air, that's in the ether, that's surging as a political kind of resonance with the current electoral offerings. But as we suspect, it's not going to change any fundamentals.
Yeah, this is something I explore in a forthcoming chat with Alex Masters, where we put Anglo-futurism under the microscope. He's rather more enthusiastic about it than I am. My suspicion is, though, is that Anglo-futurism is just a way of like selling the third one runway at Heathrow, and like HS2 and other such mundane things. Do you know what I mean? It's like kind of borrowed aesthetics to some other end, which is actually just what was going to happen anyway. Do you know what I mean? But anyway, shall we make a start? Let's make a start here.
Off we go.
In 1979, a Frenchman called Bernard Kouchner, who had founded Médecins Sans Frontières, chartered an old cargo ship, and he went to rescue.
Was that Kushner or Kutchner?
Oh, people say it various ways. Bernard Kouchner. Kouchner is usually how that's pronounced.
No relation to that Kushner, Jared Kushner.
No, Kouchner. This Bernard Kouchner. This one. So opening sort of montage there, as we'll discover, is about Julia Grant, who is a trans woman, or was a trans woman at least, and a documentary that Curtis is digging up from the BBC's past called A Change of Sex, which started in 1979 and followed the transition. And in the opening song there, he's using a cover, somebody was asking in the chat, by Daniel Johnston. True Love Will Find You in the End. Daniel Johnston, quite interesting sort of outsider musical artist. He used to just, when he was working at McDonald's, he used to put a lot of his music out on cassette, which is a nice hark back to the lo-fi world. And but he also had a lot of mental health issues and spent a lot of time in psychiatric institutions as well. Just a few notes there.
Thousands of starving refugees trapped on a tiny island. Refugees that no one else seemed to care about. They were fleeing from the new communist government that had taken over Vietnam. To many liberals in the West, the communists had been heroes in their fight against America, which meant that the refugees did not deserve to be helped. To Kouchner, this was outrageous.
The point is, people are dying in the China Sea. I mean, the boat people are now facing piracy. I mean, they are attacked by pirates 10 times in their trip. Is are still alive, and nobody are taking care of them. And that's our purpose. It's not possible to shut up now.
So can I just comment on something here? That little note from Curtis about, the left didn't really care about this, so they didn't really want to help or anything like that. You do see that they're kind of choosy with the causes that they go for and the ones that they don't. But if they don't care, they really don't care. They're having a bit of this at the moment with the attempts to like psyop regime change in Iran, and they're saying like, all you pro-Palestine lot, like why can't you get behind this type thing? But they just like the left really don't care about that, including like the talk of 30,000 dead and so on. They can't get them up for it at all. They're just like they won't take to the streets. They're just not interested at all.
Well, I think the left need more of a push because all of the causes that they really get behind, they have to have institutional backing to do so. So if that it really isn't there, then they just won't go for it. It's like an animal who's only trained to go for food under certain circumstances.
It almost has to be a semi-open door, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. They have to find mush, when they push in.
I mean, this is all part of a modern dilemma. You have this brutality in the middle of conflict, where actual people, sort of basically non-political actors are held in this sort of terrible stasis, because usually whatever struggle is going on is a proxy for an internal struggle politically or externally.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded of something Peter Greenaway, the filmmaker, said once. He said, "Good is seldom rewarded, evil goes largely unpunished, and the innocent are always abused."
And I think the left the left were contained for a long time before the right was, and I think they subsisted for a long time on closed narratives, where for years every trendy student goes on a free Mandela march. Mandela gets freed and made president of South Africa. Then South Africa just drops from the headlines. Doesn't matter anymore because it's been won. The narrative is closed. So I imagine with Vietnam it was the same thing. The communists won. That's it. There's no more humanitarian stuff. No more kind of, save the kids from bombs or whatever. That's it. It's over now. It's done. We won. So.
This is admitted very frankly in book by Antonio Negri and Hart. It's one of the Empire trilogy. In fact, it could even be in the book Empire itself, which was written like about year 2000, something like that. they literally say on the Palestine front, if the state of Palestine was ever actually established, we would instantly lose interest. It's frankly admitted in there. It is the struggle that motivates them. It is the sense of injustice that motivates them. The actual like governance of Palestine and what happens after that, couldn't give a shit. They literally write it in that book. I couldn't believe it when I read that passage, but it's kind of
politics.
That is what they're like, though. Leftists are like that. So
Kushner, he became the French foreign minister and many other things in his time. He was he essentially his paternal grandparents were Russian emigres, shall we say? You do the maths, and they perished in the Holocaust. And he started his career as a member of the French Communist Party. He was actually expelled in the mid-60s because this is will to power. He attempted to overthrow the leadership. You know, you've just got there and you're already gunning for the top spot. And he bombed around places, like he went to Cuba, hung out with Fidel Castro, kind of, fishing and drinking and stuff. And he was kind of radicalized in a sense by Biafra. Essentially, Biafra was a province in Nigeria where there was an ethnic separatist movement by the Igbo tribe, and they wanted to essentially move away from central Nigerian government rule. And he went out there as a medical officer, helping in the conflict. And as people have said in the chat, he started Médecins Sans Frontières, international doctors. But I mean, this was something very much where, in his own words, he admitted, he said, I ran to Biafra because I was too young for Guernica, Auschwitz, Oradour, and Sétif, these other sites of atrocities. He essentially, was kind of in favor of, we called it the duty of international meddling. He favored intervention, and he kind of cloaked it in the idea of it being peaceful rhetoric. But he was kind of, he protested he was against going into Iraq, for example, because he said Saddam was the number one weapon of mass destruction himself. But he kind of deplored the US methods. But he was pretty keen on regime changing, where he saw these tyrannies that fired him up at this atavistic sense that he had from history. So that's his kind of personal drive.
Kushner's action had a powerful effect in the West because it started to undermine the self-belief of a whole generation who saw themselves as radical and pure. That possibly being good was not as easy as it seemed. It began when the singer Joan Baez came out in support of Kushner. In the 1960s, she had been deeply involved in the civil rights protests.
Mother gave me 5 children to try to register.
You can't go in, nobody but students and parents.
And also one of the leaders of the anti-Vietnam War movement. She was a symbol of the idealism at its heart.
I'd like to try it, Ray.
You can't go.
But now, she said that the refusal to help the refugees showed how radicals had become not only uncaring, but corrupt. They would allow thousands of people to die simply because they had the wrong ideology. Baez was immediately attacked by other anti-war activists, led by Jane Fonda. They accused Baez of being an...
Sorry, I wasn't expecting that to go. Yeah, led by world-famous actress Jane Fonda. Okay.
Well, she was very prominent in the other episode, wasn't she? As kind of a Vietnam era radical. Jane Fonda.
That's right. Yes, the tie back, very well spotted there. And in fact, we did have a little look back, and she is been involved in lots of things.
That's right. Sort of pictured sitting on an anti-aircraft gun in Hanoi, I think, at one point, and for which she was kind of condemned. I mean, there was a big celebrity love-in with a lot of this stuff. The one of the things about Biafra here was that again, the reason it's kind of important was that Kushner, he was sort of radicalized, if you like. I mean, I don't know how much an aggressive communist can be radicalized, much more, but he saw that he was working for the Red Cross in Biafra, and he basically, because the Red Cross refused to kind of talk about it as a genocide, that's what sort of drove him to say that we want to be kind of out there with declaring that we're against genocide. So, I mean, you can kind of see where this is leading to in the modern age. It's the sort of birth of, very conspicuous humanitarianism, but often driven by, celebrity clout chasing, but also driven by other things underneath. In the case of Biafra, interestingly, and Curtis has put out stuff elsewhere on his blog, which I'll sort of retweet later on. That was kind of the first conflict that was very much PR driven. What had happened was that there was an agency in Geneva, a PR agency called Mark Press, led by a man called William Bernhardt, who was a sort of Anglo-American character, who created a sort of dramatic narrative about Biafra, about the sort of, the suffering of the people who were being starved and killed by the Nigerian government. And then he was the man who kind of instrumentalized the use of media, especially, pictures of starving babies, which we've obviously come familiar with. And he kind of stamped that sort of approach to the PR war onto, the public's consciousness. And people like Kushner very much sort of took up that angle. I mean, the reality in Biafra was, and the suspicion is, a lot of that stuff where they used publicity was actually driven by French intelligence funding, because they kind of wanted to sort of recalibrate the dominance of Africa away from the British in Nigeria. And keep, the French well up there, especially because the French had oil interests in the Niger Delta.
Well, on the point of the media, I mean, a few frames back, we saw those pictures from the civil rights era of Baez leading some kind of protest there. Did you notice how there was a bank of like 18 journalists all holding microphones and cameras, all down the side of that? I mean, and we're supposed to believe that's an organic instance there. I mean, it's this whole era was really, all the pictures and film we have of it is very, very selective and handpicked to make it come off a certain way. I mean, it's as time goes on, it's more and more kind of shameless in how obvious it was at the time. It was meant to be this completely organic, all these kind of incredibly choice moments just happened to be captured on film or on photograph.
Yeah, it's very much, although we've talked about the role of war propaganda before in previous streams, it is very much this moment where actually there's more of an aggressive private intervention, and the Biafrans are finding their own PR and in a sense getting ahead of the information war over the Nigerian government. Of course, the Nigerian government did eventually crush the Biafran separatists and won, but the war became very protracted by this kind of process of very emotional publicity, and a lot more people died as a result. But it was very much the sort of the tone that begins to be taken in subsequent conflicts. That, as you say, the Mark Press, this agency, are literally flying hundreds of journalists out there to cover this stuff, pointing the cameras at what they want to point them at, the atrocities, and using this to kind of sentimentalize the discourse in the West. So, as you say, there's very little organic stuff here. And so Kushner going in there to help the Vietnamese boat people, the idea that it's pure altruism is suspect, especially when it comes to something like him.
I mean, this is the birth of the hyperreal. This is the whole. I mean, I've quite ironically, more or less pioneered by leftist photojournalists, really. But it's the whole idea of what actually happened has no bearing on reality. The only thing that matters is what the perception of it is. So it all that matters is what's on the cover of Time magazine. What's in the Twitter slop feed nowadays. That is more important than the actual lived reality on the ground.
Unwitting agent of American imperialism.
And leftism in a way that I'm not. I think that's as simple as...
Despite the row, Kushner carried on, rescuing thousands of refugees lost at sea in tiny sinking boats.
Sorry, just clear this up. Why was she being accused of being an agent of Western imperialism? Because these are refugees targeted by the communists in Vietnam who were against the communists, right? And
yes.
So therefore, okay, I just wanted to get that bit of context absolutely clear. All right.
Kushner believed that what he was doing might also be the start of a completely new kind of radicalism, one that really would make the world a better place. The reaction in the West, he said, had shown that the old political ideologies of left and right had now lost all credibility. Kushner had an alternative idea that was going to go very deep in the imagination of the West. It said that we are all one world, linked together simply as individuals, not divided by political ideas or by nations.
This is it. This is Boomer Truth, Simon.
This is the exact moment, well timed there, because in the background, again, it's not that Curtis isn't telling you this. He actually has this on the blog, which he actually did about 14 years before this documentary. Kushner was very much influenced by the group of French philosophers who called themselves the New Philosophers. And this was people like Bernard-Henri Lévy and a particular guy called André Glucksmann. And he's a guy who had, he'd kind of basically turned against the radical left. And he developed a sort of theory of anti-totalitarianism, where the idea was that actually it's not a bad idea to work with the American, imperial empire, the American empire, because you could, as a humanitarian, use America's might to change the world in these revolutionary ways. And what he did is he reformulated the ideas of intervention in these terms, which, as you say, are very Boomer Truth. He said everything that oppressed people around the world was called Auschwitz. Even famines were called Auschwitz. And he said, people with power had a right to intervene in other societies to prevent Auschwitzes, and that included using American power.
Very interesting.
You're basically saying that this is like the sort of 70s French equivalent of being Matt Goodwin, where it's just endless. It's like no, you got to get back into liberalism. It's all this hardcore Leninism is all well and good, but we need to actually go and work with the Americans now, so we can have rainbow liberalism and endless consumerism. But it's okay because you can still call yourself a leftist. It's like you can still support reform. You can still be as right wing as you want and wave the England flag, but you'll still be working for Zionism and putting their flags up as well. So what does it matter?
Yeah. And importantly, it's using culture as well. It's emphasizing, what has been quoted as, creating the visual culture of humanitarian consumption. You leverage media.
But this is it, isn't it? This is the women's rights in Iran. This is the gay dildo in Afghanistan. It's the George Floyd on the Afghanistan wall.
Yeah,
it's the birth of it here. But this is like mid 60s, Simon, 67.
that's right. Yeah.
Imagine was recorded in 1970. Right. So this is truly the birth of what I call the Boomer Truth regime in full. The both sides of it. Remember, it's Churchill on the one hand, wedded to the John Lennon on the other, and the role of Churchill is to bring Lennon to the world at gunpoint.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like this is a hidden knowledge. MSF, Kushner's organization, even admit this on their own website, and they talk about, Mark Press, this Geneva PR agency that just kind of, suddenly gets a whole lot of money to start pumping, hot air into this narrative. And literally, when they talk about Biafra, they were creating media parallels where they talked about, the Igbo people in comparable terms to the extermination of the Jews, etc. They call them the Jews of Africa in Biafra. So you see the way this is going.
And we, the good people in the West, had a duty to intervene, to help the victims of all evil political ideas, wherever they were across the world.
I have to say, right, this is one of the things I believe, Hat, that the woke actually got right. People like David Lammy used to say things like this. The white savior complex, right? I know this was like a left-wing talking point for a long time. I actually think that is true. And this is another weird thing, is that when David Lammy would come out and say things like that, it'd be rightists who were attacking him for various different reasons. But he's actually putting his finger on something real there. That is a real phenomenon.
Well, I think that was one of the striking things about the kind of the actual core of the woke movement, if we look back, is that they were basically kind of Schmittian. They would just call out power relations. like very openly, always with a leftist framing, but it was always, you know, more or less in some ways they just call a spade a spade. And as you say, it would always be the quote unquote right that would come out and try and put things back into the liberal framing, where, you know, oh no, it's all about equality, and, you know, it's all about liberalism and kind of equality and libertarianism and this kind of thing. I mean, it is quite odd, but this has been a long trend on the kind of non-liberal left for a while now. I mean, I've been reading a lot of Deleuze and that kind of thing, which you can, if you want to, you can pretty much just read it as reactionary philosophy. I mean, there's nothing really that leftist about it. It's just saying, well, you know, here's all of it's almost like reading Carlyle. It's kind of a social critique of industrialism and fakery and kind of shams in the exact same way that men like Carlyle used to call out. It's quite strange.
Deleuze and Guattari very, very key in the discourse of my old chum Mark Fisher, you know, because essentially it's part of a tendency on the left of left accelerationism, you know, calling out the sort of the anomalies and corruptions of you know, capitalist process. That's how they see it.
That was a thing for a while, wasn't it? Based Deleuze. That was like a whole, you know, a few years ago. And you see, this is the strange esoteric truth of the James Lindsay, that when he says woke right, there is actually a strain. There's a strain of truth to it.
Quiet.
But not for the reasons that he thinks. But there is a strange of. I mean, I've always maintained that the left are often more correct than the centre right, who are only liars. I maintain that.
It's just liberalism. I mean, for me at this point, political ideas are basically just stripped into pro-liberal or anti-liberal. Like that. I mean, that's really where the modern political schism is you're either James Lindsay or you're Deleuze. Basically, I mean that's more or less what the real division is. And a lot of people, the problem is a lot of people are on the James Lindsay end of things without realizing it. You know, they will constantly run defenses for liberalism while believing that they're being left wing or right wing or Christian or some other metaphysical stripe.
This is a problem I've seen on the left, by the way, is that, how can I say, like, you can agree with them 80% of the way, but then they cling on to absolute fictions, demonstrable fictions. And you even see it with people who are pretty woke on many different issues, but then they'll slip in, oh, but of course we do want to see democracy in Iran or something like that. It's just like, like how they see everything else, but then they cling on to that last little bit or whatever it is, you know. So,
well, anyway. I mean, I think the perfect example. I mean, I was talking about how a lot of the people in the original core of the woke movement kind of got things correct. But then, as you say, you know, they all insisted on the trans thing. You know, also you're gonna do this kind of weird stripe of realism, but also insist that, you know, you can totally radically redefine every bit of biological reality from an individual point of view. Type that, you know, there's, as you say, there's always something that brings them back into that realm.
Yeah, well, according to Caleb Maupin, a lot of that was artificially injected. That's why he argues, like, you know, it was kind of Marxist circles were infiltrated. Leninist Marxist circles were infiltrated with a lot of this shit, according to him. You know, and he's got a whole idea that the entirety of BreadTube is basically astroturfed. You know, which I can kind of believe. You know, there's receipts that they were being funded by like British government or State Department or whatever, various different times. So.
We don't care on leftist and rightist countries. There is no leftist and rightist suffering, and there is no possibility to split the world in good people and bad people, good dead and bad dead. Because we think that this is a new kind of policy. For us, human being is one. to let the people speak to each other before dying.
Hello.
We've paused. Are you unmuted?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to unmute. I don't want to derail things too much, Pat, right? But is what he said just now not simply just Christian morality?
Sorry, what was it exactly he said at the end there?
So he said, look, when people are suffering, when people are dying, when people are getting killed, you can't split the world into good and bad or right or left. You know, they're all people. They all count. And to me, all of that way of thinking it just strikes a Christian tone. Is it not basically the church's belief that all people in the world count? Everybody's got a soul.
Well, I suppose what he said would just be basic universalism. And obviously, given his views, I'd kind of want to I'd have to push him a bit further on whether that individualism is a genuine one or a kind of Machiavellian thing in that moment to kind of seem more conscientious than he actually is. As for universalism, I mean, there's a million different answers for that. It depends on which denomination you talk about. But I kind of know what you're saying.
It feels like what you're saying resonates with the idea that Curtis is talking about, creating these powerful narratives to shift, sentiment, and what he's playing on is the kind of residue of Christian belief in people there.
Yeah, possibly. And I mean,
while being at the center of something like the European project as well, the kind of the sort of unity technocrat.
Well, also not to we have to be careful on here, but is it not surprising that men of that particular ethnic background would push for this rainbow world where ethnicity doesn't matter, and everyone just blends in seamlessly? It's worth asking the question.
See, I don't know though, because they're very, very, very ethnocentric, and that's been their, in a sense, tragedy all through history.
Well, they're ethnocentric within the framework of universalism, from a certain
right,
point
but they want to maintain. What I'm saying is, I mean, you read something like Merchant of Venice, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is the absolute refusal of him to want to integrate. There's a whole plot point about he doesn't want his daughter to marry a Gentile. He rejects Christian values. He won't, and he really, really wants to cling on to his identity. All his friends are from the same ethnic background. He wants to abide by the same laws as everyone else, but when it comes to that, he won't give in. As against and I believe this is there in the play, and I believe it's there as a strain in Christianity. The kind of correct response, or the what the audience of that time would have wanted to see is actually no, he needs to give all of that up, convert. He needs to become part of the flock. He needs to become, he could just be the same as all the other Venetians.
Well, along the lines of Othello, who tries to fit in, basically.
I mean, funny enough, as per my own reading of Othello, Shakespeare destroys him too. It's like he's saying, like, neither of these two things are going to work. In Venice, at the very least, you're going to get buggered either way, right? But I mean, some people have tried to cope and said, like, this is an English comment on continental racism and things like this. I don't believe that. I don't think that at all. I think Shakespeare is saying, neither the multiculturalism nor the integration thing works. That's right.
Do you notice how you illustrated there when you mentioned the Shylock example? That this is kind of what I was trying to say, is that they want to have their cake and eat it too, right? They want to have the ethnocentrism and the benefit of being part of the community of wherever they are. I mean, this is the reason for the infamous Chesterton and Belloc argument in the Edwardian era. Yes. That all the Jews should have to wear their own particular type of garb. They should all have to wear kind of Middle Eastern style dress, because he said, well, you can't claim to be a kind of natural born Englishman, and then also kind of stick out and be, well, I'm a proud Jew. It's like you got to be one or the other, because otherwise the whole concept, the whole civic concept falls apart.
Well, I think it's fair. I mean, this is a point that Dennis Prager, of all people, used to bring up all the time.
Really?
I think it's fair, right, to say that there is a certain stripe of secularized, reformed, modern person from this diaspora who genuinely, at this point in history that we're looking at now, was like, look, we're going to be part of this this global story, like this. We're going to try to do this, and there is, I mean, how can I put this? There is a genuine disagreement between
Larry David is what you're talking about,
right. There's a genuine disagreement between some of your hardcore, Zionists and so on at the moment, and let's say your Hollywood types, or I don't know, someone like Dave Smith, who's like a dyed-in-the-wool libertarian or something like this.
But do you see the problem with that? Is that even the ones that spend their lives professing that they want this kind of washed rainbow liberalism, they all live in these kind of ultra secure kind of ethnic compounds in places like Hollywood and New York.
Yeah.
I mean, in London it's the same thing. I mean, it's always a kind of rainbow for thee, but not for me. I mean, it never bears up reality.
That is, I mean, that is also true though of white liberals. It's like your basic shit lib also does this, right? It's the difference between the stated preference and the revealed preference over and over again. And what does it come down to? It just comes down to they don't want to be around crime. It's all the same drivers at the end of the day. It's like, it's all the same, they want to feel safe. And this is just like what, I mean, if you go back to my video, Black Flight, White Flight from many years ago, even the Thomas Sowell types do this. Even like the educated black community want to live in a safe neighborhood and they run away from crime. So it's like, well, I'm not sure necessarily if this is a I do think there is a stripe of true believer that exists.
Well, it may be a case of getting high on your own supply, isn't it, really? Because we're talking about going back to things like The Power of Nightmares and Leo Strauss teaching the ruling class of the importance of maintaining, the noble lie of the sort of, the two-speed system, the narrative you tell the chuds and the one that you preserve for yourself. And these are perhaps people dancing over that thin line and then sort of tumbling inadvertently into the kind of liberal mythos they've created or that they've empowered.
This is your modern day New Yorker who's from this diaspora voting for Mamdani. Right? I mean, it's like, this is a real thing that exists. And I mean, because I'm a regular reader of things like Tablet Magazine, Panama, right? This is a conversation that goes on. It's like, well, look, this is what we're going to do with our own libtards.
If the rule they followed brought them to this.
Yeah, exactly. So in a way, they have the same issue with the libtards exists, or even within that group.
Well, out of curiosity, what is their solution to the problem of their own libtards then?
Well, I mean, genuinely, I think there's a genuine conflict between the ones who want the nationalism and the ones who want the John Lennon Imagine world. Yeah, and I mean, currently it's all falling apart a little bit, and people are being kind of made to choose at the moment, and it's kind of been interesting to see, where people fall, and some people have been like, no, this is genuinely what we believe. This is the whole Harold Pinter thing.
Yeah,
Harold Pinter, the genuine anti-neocon, or someone like Bernie, right? Say, right, versus people who, like, I tell you, two people who went the other way were David Schwimmer and David Baddiel. All of a sudden, it was like, oh shit, I've been a shit lid for the past 40 years or 50 years or whatever.
And they circled the wagons.
Now I realize I had a wake up call on 10/7. now I'm all about Israel or whatever.
I think
Yeah.
Simon's right. Is that for ones like Pinter, because you have to remember Pinter. I mean, really is just he's brought up and built in the consciousness that is much more of the English intelligentsia than it is of any kind of Jewish stripe. I mean, his parents were quite conservative, in a kind of bourgeois English sense more than a Jewish sense, and probably I think it's a case of just you still have that Jewishness, but you're built more in the mold of the liberal. I mean, you could perhaps an interesting kind of fellow example to this would be in South Africa, where I read a book a few years ago about kind of history of liberalism there, where you have these really hardcore kind of Dutch kind of burger Afrikaner families who would have a son that would go off to some kind of private school in the Cape and then come back as this kind of J.S. Mill style tolerant liberal. And of course, with all the white liberals, a huge amount of them were Jewish. Because again, I think there is that pull towards wanting to live in a nation where ethnicity doesn't really matter, because then you kind of get a free pass, right? But I mean, also we have to remember when it comes to the Jewish nationalism thing, that there were Jews of many different stripes who were strongly opposed to the creation of Israel for a number of different reasons. There was a very strong, I mean, there was a lot of British Jews who were really against it. Around the time of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, a number of them, I don't think they actually did it, but there was basically a lobby of Jews who threatened to go and fight for the Arabs on the side of the Egyptian army or something like that. Because I mean, it was partly a leftist thing, because they viewed Israel as a British neo-colonialist project, which it partly was back then. Weirdly enough, in 48, it was the Americans who were quite cold on Israel for a number of reasons, and the Brits and the French who were much more in favor of it, because they saw it as a way back into the Middle East to regain colonial control. That's why Israel was with Britain and France and Suez and this kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, we see how that panned out.
So it is an interesting thing, but I do think there are people, Jewish people who genuinely have that thing, is like, well, okay, we're now in this country, we just want to be like part of the general story of this thing, okay? But also, it would be better if this story was inclusive, right? Like, or better if this story was kind of like humanitarian and universal in the way that we're looking at now. And you can kind of see why, given the long history, right? I mean, if given the history of where the other way of being resulted in, all the warnings from history and Merchant of Venice and so on, it's like this is a settlement that kind of works for a while.
Isn't this just kind of what you get with liberalism and putting groups into places like this? Because I mean, look at someone like Ash Sakar. I mean, she likes to go on about being a leftist radical, but as you say, probably deep down her dream is to just be Priti Patel. Right.
Well, this is Ash Sakar's strategy, is that she's essentially wants to be
British. She wants to be British.
This is another woke talking point. The coconut, right? The internalized whiteness, right? This is the thing. Her hopes and dreams, the life, everything are basically not.
No,
indigenous to her.
No, you could give Ash Sakar white skin, and she'd still be Ash Sakar. Though she wouldn't have to change any talking points, because it's just late stage Anglo left liberalism.
Yeah, but I think that, I mean, I don't want to get too hung up on my pet psychologizing theory of Ash Sakar, but my view is that Ash Sakar, a lot of her communism, her radicalism, and so on, in a sense, is performative, because she's trying to fit in with the set. She's trying to fit in with her uni mate. She's trying to fit in. She thinks it's what you should be doing to like become British.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, especially it's marked out with women, because women always chase after the social conformity. And I mean, to be honest, I think the career progression of Ash Sakar, assuming she doesn't become too spicy on the Israel thing, will probably be ending up like the next Baroness Varzi or something, some kind of East Asian Labour peer type woman, because there is a whole subset class of them. And she could very easily enter that set, so we have to see.
With the nice girl in the park, you were strolling full of joy, and you told me that you'd never kissed a girl before. Hold your hand out, you naughty boy. Hold your hand out, you naughty boy. Hold your hand out, you naughty boy. Last night in the pale moonlight, I saw you with the nice girl in the park.
Julia Grant had grown up in the north of England, near Blackpool.
Could we pause? Sorry.
Yes, go on, Panama.
Was that that wasn't the troon, was it? Was it?
Yes.
And it was doing like Edwardian music hall.
Yeah, she was miming to a record called Music Hall Sing Along from 1974. So if you remember the actress Beryl Reid, she played Connie Sachs in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. She was singing music hall numbers. It was very much that time when you had the good old days on the telly, where they recreate an Edwardian music hall and the associated campery of that. Yeah,
I mean, I was expecting some kind of Liza Minnelli's Cabaret or like Pussy Riot or some kind of really like debauched radical thing, and it was like old trad music hall songs. It's just quite bizarre. Yeah.
I just want to say something that may end up being quite offensive to lots of people, but before I heard anything said from Curtis or knew anything else, I knew this person was Northern already.
Well, that opening where he's walking down the street in his flares with his like big sort of chubby face and long hair. I thought it was the start of like a beer advert. I thought it was going to be like a Newcastle brown ale, because I would not have thought, oh, this person's going to go and be a transsexual. I mean, he did look like a bloke from down the sight,
But you know what I mean about having like a Northern face? I think there's something. It's like you can't quite put your finger on it, but there's something that you can kind of tell in the physiognomy of the people from different parts of the country. But
it's there's sort of quite a sad background to the Julia Grant story in terms of the biography. Born as George Roberts in Blackpool, and George's father was a fisherman. He was very let's say he tried to rape George as a child. He was kind of a violent alcoholic, and George's mother was an alcoholic as well, who tried to kill herself a few times. And then George, later to become Julia, spent a lot of time in children's homes and as a child prostitute as well.
Oh God!
So
well, that was around Cyril Smith's neck of the woods, wasn't it? Around up that way. So bad, very bad times to be in a care home.
No.
But in the 1970s, she had moved south and became part of the growing gay scene and a drag artist. She knew inside herself that she was a woman. That was her true self, which made her an outsider everywhere, including in the gay world.
When I was living on the apparently gay scene and being a drag artist, nobody thought any bad if I sort of went out, did my show, and when I came off stage, sort of toned down my makeup and put on a dress, because I was accepted as a drag artist. Whereas if I tried to go to a gay pub dressed as a woman, most gay people resent the fact of that a man wants to change his sex.
So the original
terms and transsexuals.
Put in the T in T and put in the G in G.
Are a minority within the actual gay world.
To have a gender reassignment operation, Julia was going to have to go through a series of interviews with a state psychiatrist. He would decide who she really was. Julia was part of a powerful idea rising up in the 1980s. It said that to change the world and to make it a better place, You should fight to become who you as an individual truly were.
Like, Adam Curtis is basically reactionary here. This is basic, like, how's he getting away with this? Or is he just like, people just assume because it's on the BBC that he's like, I mean, this is just stuff we've said at this point.
And I think you've also got to be aware, you know, and just for people watching, you know, Curtis's authorial voice, I think, does approach something value-free in the way he's using it. There's Curtis, the guy, he may have his own political opinions. I'm not sure he's kind of as ultra-progressive as people think. You know, he does have kind of, you know, feet, if you like, in our camp. And when he's describing this, he's describing it on the terms of the person involved in terms of the narrative that's being told. I can't read too much into what he's saying. He's talking about the focus on the individual, essentially.
But also, Simon, sorry. You know, with Curtis, that but this is a fantasy. It's just round the corner, always lurking, just in the timbre of his voice. So when he says in the 80s, it was sold as an idea that people should become who they really wanted to be. ... But this was a fantasy. It's just like it's almost already there.
Is Curtis not saying that with the wistfulness of the wounded liberal? Kind of that he wanted this to be true, and it's like, you know, because you as well as the reactionary stuff, you can read in a kind of just leftist anti-capitalist critique through Curtis, where it's just, you know, we could have had beautiful multicultural rainbow world if it wasn't for Maggie Thatcher and, you know, a bunch of dodgy corporations coming in and ruining it all, type thing.
I don't know. I feel like it may be. I feel like it may. I often think he's coming from a slightly different place from that. That his voice isn't from the liberal left, but
he frequently excoriates the left for its failures of imagination, so to speak, and its ability to go down the wrong avenue with great force and make its own.
Because surely this, what we're seeing here, is, I mean, I was reminded of that Tory trans who loves Maggie Thatcher, but in a way, this is it. This is Thatcherite individualism writ large.
Well,
is it?
Do you want to wager a fiver that there's going to be but this was a fantasy coming up in the next 5 minutes?
No, I mean, this was put out in 2021, so he's probably being careful. But
right, yeah.
You know what I mean, though. He is landing on the fact that this is where individualism leads, and I think that his wistful yearning, in a way, is back to the post. I mean, it's always the same thing, Simon. The paternalistic post-war consensus era of you know, Macmillan and Wilson and people like this. You know, am I wrong?
It's not going to end well for Julia Grant, is all I can say as a hint. So,
all right, we'll have to see.
That was real freedom, but to do it, Julia was going to have to take on the medical establishment.
You have a letter from your doctor for me? Right. Well, what is the problem?
Well, I feel I've been having a fight with myself for a long time. I've now come to terms with the fact that I believe I am a woman, trapped within sort of a man's body.
What do you mean by being a woman?
Well, my whole, all my thoughts and everything are feminine. There's nothing masculine. I tend to reject my masculine body.
You know it to be masculine?
I identify it as masculine because society identifies me as masculine.
Well, it's not a matter of society, it's a matter of anatomy. You say you feel like a woman?
Yes, I believe everything I do is feminine. I believe I'm a woman inside.
Oh, Michelle, how does it feel to be a woman?
It just feels like being me. Can't describe it as anything else.
Well, see, she's right. Nobody knows how anybody else feels inside.
Well, I believe I don't actually feel the way a normal man should feel.
Maybe that you identify with certain stereotypes of the female gender role. That is, the traditions, the behavior, the ideas, but that doesn't make you a woman.
You know, styles do change, even if you think they don't. Shoulders are wider. and they're higher. And so they all had to have pads put in.
See, look, Margaret Thatcher was a spiritual trude herself.
I mean, can I just say that was one of the great... I think that's from my favorite cut in any Adam Curtis film. It's from that kind of... You know the scene in Clockwork Orange with all the doctors? I mean, it reminded me of that, this kind of very clinical scene with this kind of posh doctors going, do you feel like a woman? And then just cut to Margaret Thatcher picking out clothes. That's brilliant. That's inspired.
And perfectly anticipates what you were saying about the idea of Thatcherite sort of buccaneering individualism. I mean, for those who in the chat who are old enough, they will remember, and for those who are not, this was a very real part of the 80s. The idea of so-called power dressing and women wearing shoulder pads. I mean, I knew women who wore shoulder pads in clothes into the late 90s. Maybe even early 2000s.
I'd like to see make a comeback.
Is this your sort of slight lesbianic kind of?
I don't know. Maybe it was just I was socialized at a time by power dressing women. It's kind of.
Well, how would you power dress? Would you
well,
finally wear a cape?
little mini skirt.
Well, of course, you've got your wizard robe and a big.
Oh,
hat.
that's true. I do have my wizard robe.
You could go for the kind of the Islamic scholar look.
And insofar as we could, we've just lengthened them a little bit because they're longer. And the thing we've learned is never really press your hem. Sometimes
I should say there has been a weird trend of women getting like surgery to make their faces look more masculine. That's I don't like that trend because it looks weird.
To look more masculine.
Yeah, they get their jaws kind of made into. It's almost like the Chad meme jaw. Like women going for that jawline. That's
and
weird.
is it explicitly to cultivate a masculine look, or is it just how it ends up looking?
I don't know, but that whatever trend that is, I don't like that trend.
They want the look of the new head of MI6, Blaise Metroelli. They want that.
She's natural. She's hot.
They want that David Coulthard big jaw.
Right. Bobby Davro.
If it's natural, it's fine. But if you're getting it done, you end up looking at Laura Loomer or somebody like this.
Yeah.
I have to say, I think Milo made much in the bit back in the day of his. He had some facial surgery, like veneers put in.
Did he
accentuate the jawline? Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think he would hide any of that stuff.
It sounds a bit like a salon in here now. we're all sat under the hairdryers talking about.
I need to do something about my weak chin. Yeah. Prosthetic.
I'm gonna have skin whitening.
I have one of the reasons I have a beard is because when I was 7, I had an accident where I fell. I did a 360 bump in pro wrestling terms on my bike. I was coming down a hill and I just used the front brake. I didn't use the back brake, and I flipped over the handlebars.
I've done that. Yeah.
And landed on my chin. And I had to go to hospital and get stitches in my chin.
Like your chin. Mm-hmm.
And then like 2 days later, I was having a wrestling match or something with my friend on the sofa. And my parents had this bamboo sofa.
Wrestling.
And I hit my freshly stitched chin on the bamboo.
Ooh.
Taking a body slam or something.
Yeah.
And then I had to have it done again.
Oh,
so
God.
I had to have a second set of stitches done. So I've got
like a cool Harrison Ford type scar.
So I've got like a scar on the bottom of my. I don't know if it's still there. Maybe I'll shave it off and have a look. But that's anyway. Let's carry on.
You could claim it's like a fencing scar. Like the Germans used to have.
Prussians, yeah.
Yeah, Mensur.
They press along the hem until it looks like a knife edge. And then if you want to let it down, you can't. Just leave the hem gently rolled. And then you'll never press along the edge. Then you can let them down.
Pause. Tory boys in the chat loving this. She's all woman.
Could I just say, it genuinely feels jarring to watch Margaret Thatcher do something feminine. I don't think I've ever seen footage of her when she wasn't talking about politics or, you know, in the House of Commons or something. I mean, to see her actually just, you know, being a womany woman, picking out clothes and talking about how to iron your hem, you know, it's very jarring.
She did actually do, because our image of her is like stabbing someone's eye out with a cigar butt or something like that, isn't it? But that was all spitting image, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, she did do a lot. If you watch Maggie footage, she did quite a lot of like grocery stuff.
The housewife vote.
Like she did, she went out and be like, oh, I wonder what, you know, if I want to put and she explains like inflation and things through like going to the shops. There's all sorts of weird Thatcher skits where she's doing stuff like that, which is quite domestic, and she's clearly talking to the women in the country.
She did cultivate the image of being a prime minister housewife.
Home economics as national economics,
which to be fair wasn't totally untrue, because she did pride herself on still being a faithful kind of what would on the internet would now be called a trad wife to her husband and children. Apparently, when she was all the time she was prime minister, the first thing she did when she woke up in the morning was to make Dennis's bacon and egg, and this kind of thing. So there was some truth to it.
But don't forget, her backstory is that she was a grocer's daughter.
Yeah.
And so she was leaning into the idea of Britain as a nation of shopkeepers.
Yeah.
That whole meme. And funny enough, in that tradition, our current Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, was on LBC yesterday morning talking about how she grew up in a corner shop. Her parents owned a corner store, and I didn't know that about Shabana Mahmood. But yeah, she's literally a corner store shopkeeper's daughter, and she was saying that, and that's why shoplifting is really near and dear to my heart, because the Tory. I didn't know that this was. I didn't know this until I heard her talk about it. The Tories have brought in, or had brought in, a £200 limit under which they wouldn't prosecute any shoplifting. So you could go into Tesco's and nick a Mars bar or something, and the police wouldn't do anything. As a cost exercise, and she was like, "Look, as a corner store, someone who grew up working in my dad's corner store, shoplifting affected us deeply. They stole the till twice when I was growing up, and so I'm making it so that it doesn't matter how small the crime is, but the police will be there, and you will have a record."
It's a rare bit of red meat for Labour, isn't it? That, like, to appeal to the, you know, kind of slightly more Middle England base. But do you think maybe in sort of 20 odd years there'll be, you know, another one going, you know, who was born in maybe 2018 going, you know, I grew up in my father's illegal cash only vape shop. You know, we had an enormous red Bentley that we bought with the. This is why I'm a libertarian, because I believe in low taxes and, you know, more barbershops.
It's kind of already happened with Angela Rayner. You know, the council estate mum. You know, I was on welfare and all that. Like, they've kind of done that. Like, that's been a thing that wouldn't have happened before. Angela Rayner was like the first. I guess you'd say, like, I don't want to be offensive to anyone here, but like a chav politician.
Yeah.
We hadn't had one of those before. You know, there's a difference between, you know, traditional working class and like what you know, chav. Owen Jones wrote a whole book on chavs, right?
Yeah.
But like Angela Rayner was, you know, she was almost like a Little Britain character.
Benefit Street sort of.
Yeah, Benefit Street as a politician.
Chip shop Debs, you know, as you called it, Chip shop Debs.
Yeah.
You know.
It is the aspect of performative politics, you know, this conscious class fetishization as your unique selling point. Like, well, I mean, Prescott had this for a bit, obviously, as well.
And like with Thatcher basically truly being a type of housewife, it's true with Rayner. I mean, she spent I think a couple of thousand of state money on a boob reduction, you know, so.
Shame.
You know, true chat.
Damn shame, I tell you, that should be criminal. Can I just say as well, another classic Curto high rise. He loves the kind of socialist buildings of this period. I'm guessing we're going back to China here.
Yeah.
China News Agency supplied all the news for everyone in China. But it also ran a privileged news service for the Communist Party elite.
Can I just say, I fucking love how dour that room is.
Mm.
So dour, so serious, so like
bleak.
You are in a communist state. I kind of love that.
Yeah,
feel.
everyone's wearing a bloody boiler suit, you know.
Remember that little shot of the spider crawling across the map? There'll be a little resonance with that later on, which I'll bring out.
And the higher you were in the party, the more truth you were allowed to know. There were 3 levels of secret newspapers published every day. And at the top, there was what was called Big Reference. Very few copies were printed because they were only for the top leadership. And it was printed in extra large type to make it easier for the old men who ran the country to read it.
I mean, I don't know about you, Panama Hat, but based.
I know. I was thinking that. I was thinking I really like this. I mean, also I love that it's called Big Reference. I think we should.
Oh, yeah.
What you should do is have the top tier of your channel membership be called Big Reference. You have to be the elite of the watcher.
Maybe I'll put the recent Blonde in the Belly of the Beast interview uncensored, where because the second half of it is basically beeped because she was off the cuff.
Yeah, you got to be Big Reference.
But I'll put it on the Big Reference tier.
Yeah,
annual monthly membership, like 77 quid or something.
In huge print font for all the old men to read.
Yeah.
Can I do you think that there's something like this for our elites now? That there's a current version of Big Reference.
I was going to say it's almost like when I'm doing research for this show, it becomes, as people have noted, it's increasingly hard to find things online. I'm often searching for stuff that, I'm looking at the background of a shot or an incident, and I'm putting in as many descriptions as I can to try and sort of nail things down. And it keeps giving me the same stuff again and again. So you kind of find that, if you put in a term of reference, it'll actually relate it to something else that it wants you to look. It's sort of, you get the feeling it wants you to look at, So I was looking at, there's a bit in this episode about the massacre at Srebrenica, later on. And I was looking for stuff contemporary from the time, but all it was showing me was recent programs made about, the wars in former Yugoslavia. And you got the sense that it just wants you to sort of look at the stuff that's telling you what to think, rather than actual. I mean, I sort of remember a time when it felt like the internet could provide, it felt like the greatest tool in the world. You could dig up all kinds of obscure stuff. And it feels like that amount of reference is shrinking now, very much. So, I mean, I literally do find it increasingly difficult to find stuff. I do all kinds of reverse image searches, searching by phrase, words in quotations to try and nail down particular things. And with the bits on Russia in this episode, I found it difficult to nail things which you thought would have been notable incidents in the media, and they're just not there anymore. And I know there's stories that have disappeared.
And there's also an increasing amount of academic work that's stuck behind a paywall as well.
Yeah.
That you can't. That could hide off and you can't access it.
To be honest, when it comes to political stuff, something I've learned the past lot of years watching you and watching Scrump in particular, is actually how oddly unobscurantist our elite are. They tend to do everything very much in the open, but no one pays any attention to it. Everyone's so busy watching the headlines that they don't look at, say, the completely public access papers put out by the Tony Blair Institute, which tell you years in advance what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And it's sort of like it is basically this kind of big reference thing because only the elite read it, but it's completely open source. Anyone could read it and just basically you can just read the script in ahead of the program, but no one does. So it's quite weird. They're open, but no one bothers.
And it's been talked about on this channel before that, often the best way to find a lot of stuff is, as AA, you've said, to people, well, how do you think I find out this material? I just literally go and read what they're putting out, what's in the Guardian, something which is quite good for facts.
One of Scrump's talking points is that the media is just the elites talking to each other.
Yeah.
Right. But you just have to know
read between the lines.
Read beyond the headline or in fact, a lot of the times they'll tell you in the headline the direction of travel and things like that. I mean, remember my little trick when it's a question, the answer is always no, and things like that. I mean, you can glean a lot just from the headlines, but there is an extent to which all is revealed, all is out there already. When I used to do the Dark Lord watch stuff, you know, when I used to cover Blair quite extensively, very often the views on my review of Blair's speech would be like 10,000, 20,000 people who watched it. You go back to the original video for the intended audience, and like 140 people had watched it.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you see, that's how it is out there. They do talk about it. It's just there's such a flood of info that most normal people are never going to find it. Like finding it, you don't have to know where to look, and so on and so forth. So,
and there's this sort of internalized mechanism that Curtis is kind of referring to throughout this series about people are then looking at those things and then they're kind of retconning them in their brain to add a kind of conspiratorial element to it. When in the wash, it comes out later that no, it was just as it was stated.
Exactly,
it wasn't a 4D chess move, you know. This stuff about big reference and stuff in China was correct. There were 3 levels. There was the public level called reference news, and that was kind of curated foreign news. It was kind of sold as a window to the world, but it was heavily filtered to prevent anything that was going to be thought destabilizing. You had mid-level references for sort of party officials, which had sort of uncensored foreign reports. And that was divided into 2 things. One that was called Neibu Kankao, internal reference. And there was a Zhuanzhao Dongtai, which was propaganda trends. And these might have involved looking at foreign critiques, but they were not thought suitable for the chuds. And then the high level stuff, the restricted stuff, was in big reference or Dakankao, you know, which was the top secret internal bulletin.
In a way, I've come to see the wisdom of this because, dare I say it, the masses cannot actually handle being red-pilled.
No.
They just can't handle it. And this has been proven now. The chuds cannot handle being red-pilled. And so, you know, what was isn't the title for this? The people are stupid. What if the people are stupid?
What if the people are stupid?
I mean,
but then you mean people will literally you can give them all the information and they will self-select for their own narrative. They will actively filter out news they don't want to see. So a lot of the time, especially with modern social media, you don't actually have to do that much censorship. People just won't take it in if they don't want to.
And at the very top was now Deng Xiaoping. He was in complete control in China. He had defeated all his rivals. And to show his strength, in 1979, he put his main enemy on trial, Jiang Qing.
I mean, not a minute too soon as well, Simon. You've seen this pitch for weeks now.
Well deserved. Well deserved.
Yeah.
She was accused, along with the other members of the Gang of Four, of killing and persecuting thousands of people in the Cultural Revolution. But she refused to recognize the court. She continually attacked the judges.
Every chud longs to see Hillary Clinton be put on this sort of trial.
Yeah.
Clinton, I do not respect the authority of this court.
For the murder of Colonel Gaddafi, for the murder of Obama's pool boy. You know,
there is footage of you laughing, Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
We deserved it.
Well, also, have you
I won in 2016. I was cheated. The Russians.
have you noticed that it's sort of a stock political end? You know, you kind of die in office, get taken out in a coup, or you spend the last sort of few months insisting in a court that you don't recognize the authority.
Very Charles I, isn't it?
Exactly. It goes back a long way, you know.
The judges, she said, were hypocrites. They had all followed Mao's ideas. They were just turning on her to save themselves.
can I just say the aesthetics of this court are phenomenal. Fucking phenomenal. You're going to be judged by this lot. Oh shit! And she's still like, I'm not having it.
Yeah.
And there were dozens of judges. There was an official book put out about the trial, which I found a transcript of, and there's 14 judges sitting there. But I mean, there must have been like more than that, like a couple of dozen judges and loads of other, government lawyers and experts and witnesses and so on.
It looks a bit like a 70s game show, like a British game show. The set,
like Come Dancing.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's like the what was the other one that Bruce Forsyth
Generation Game.
Yeah, it's like that with the rows of people and the horrible kind of red velvet
blankety blank
set. Yeah, it's like a weird edition of that we never got to see.
Yeah, but look at her. I mean, she's insufferable. I mean,
yeah.
Can you imagine Brucey comes out? Oh, you're right, love.
It's nice to see you.
Yeah.
Today we're coming from Chongqing.
Instead, she presented herself as the one thing that she knew Deng Xiaoping feared most, a defiant individual. As she was hustled out of the court, she shouted, "I am without heaven, and a law unto myself. It is right to rebel." But Deng showed her no mercy.
I got to the point where I kind of wanted this to happen to the Trump admin as well. I wanted to like Pete Hegseth and Stephen Miller and all these people. I'd love to see both of these scenarios play out. MAGA put in.
It would never happen because you'd have to put Zionism on trial, wouldn't you? Basically.
Oh well, yeah.
I mean, it's not going to happen.
Love Gavin Newsom just goes for it, puts all of these people.
I have the power of heaven. I am righteous in my ideals.
Trump in the court. I put my own morality above international law. Damn it!
Do you remember that scene from Death of Stalin where they put Beria on trial at the end and he's screaming, "I judge you. You have no right to judge me. I judge you." Like, yeah, that's how it would be.
Deng Xiaoping decided to experiment with democracy. He allowed people to put up posters and sell magazines in Tiananmen Square. It was
pretty dangerous thing.
Known as Democracy Wall, and it quickly became a symbol of a new openness in China. But then it started to run out of control. People published details of widespread corruption, greed, incompetence and nepotism at the very top of the Communist Party. And then that force that Jiang Qing had prophesied, individualism, re-emerged. Wei Jingsheng worked as an electrician at Beijing Zoo. Wei was a charismatic figure, and he quickly became a leading force at Democracy Wall. He called for the overthrow of Deng Xiaoping. He put up posters that said, "We want no more gods, or emperors, or saviors of any kind. We want to be our own masters. Everything that is happening now is just a newfangled lie. Deng is just a new fascist dictator."
Pause. And he pinned this up on the wall. It was a little essay he did called "The Fifth Modernization," which, in his view, should be the adoption of democracy. And it was kind of very light and reasoned. It was actually slightly more moderate in tone than Curtis is portraying here. And he's talking, well, there's going to be problems in transitioning, but, I'm sure we can sort of get over it. And he put this essay up and he put his name and address on it. So they banged him up for 14 years.
Very silly move there from Chinese John Lennon.
It was a change because everybody using Democracy Wall was doing it anonymously. So these were like internet anons, and he was face fagging to the regime.
Well, I mean, as someone said in the chat, I mean, Deng more or less invented 4chan by starting this wall, didn't he? I mean, it's, you know, anyone gets to go and put an anonymous post on there, except some idiot put his name and address down and started a whole incident.
For Deng, yeah.
The wall was closed down, all the posters hosed off, and Wei was arrested. Wei Jingsheng's trial was broadcast live on television. He was accused of counter-revolutionary crimes and passing secrets to foreign agents.
Why was it necessary to close down Democracy Wall?
Well, you see, on the democratic wall, everyone, without put on his name, can blame or charge any person.
A non-posting in Deng's China. How dare they non-post?
Yeah.
Without any ground. They can do it without any legal obligation. Do you think in England, do you have this kind of freedom?
Well, could you pause?
I don't think so. Blame any...
Isn't this just the Starmer government's attitude to all social media? You know, just kind of, you need to have your name on it. We need to bring in age blocks. You need to have your ID. You know, this is what Blair thinks of the internet, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that guy there. Just to be absolutely clear, he's the regime. He's the Xinhua news agency, and he's explaining. We have this democracy wall. People can put up anything. You can literally libel people. Would it be allowed in England? So the warning is there. When they invite you to give your feedback, do think about that, because truth is not your shield.
Any person without putting on his own name in the wallpaper, do you think that is a kind of freedom? I don't think so.
Do you think that there's freedom of speech? The way it looks in the West is that the moment the lid came off for a second in China and people made contact with Western journalists...
I think I have to go for another... some work to do.
I have to go now.
This interview's over. Yeah.
Pause.
Bernard Kouchner's humanitarian...
Just briefly, there was a happy ending. Wei Jingsheng, he did actually get, I think, rescued by Clinton. He was green carded out and now lives in America, talks about freedom and stuff.
How old is he?
Oh, in his early 70s, I think.
Oh, interesting.
71, I think.
And vision of a world without borders was now spreading. Idealists from the West, inspired by his ideas, were traveling to conflicts all around the world. In Afghanistan, they came to help the Mujahideen, who they saw as noble idealists, struggling against the Russian invasion.
En Afghanistan, les Moudjahidines sont des gens qui se battent seuls pour un idéal qui m'a séduit. Et je savais qu'il manquait de médecins et c'était un peuple qui avait besoin de nous. Et donc je suis venue. Bon, il y a aussi un petit peu le côté aventureux qu'il ne faut pas négliger. On vient là pour soi également. Il faut rester honnête. Et c'est un genre de travail, d'aventure, on peut dire, qui me plaît pour un temps limité. Et quand les risques sont limités également.
Can we pause?
And in 1984, it suddenly...
Just this comes up quite a lot in this old school leftist discourse around the, quote, religious freedom. Because I've noticed that they say that about Afghanistan when, in the Taliban era, but even like the original Mujahideen was still extremely fundamentalist. You know, very, 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 very not John Lennon. You know, in their outlook, it was not an individualistic movement or indeed an individualistic country. I mean, it's all extremely tribal, extremely village based. But these leftists went to go and fight for it. It somewhat reminds me of the amount of leftists who got behind the IRA. Pushing again the idea of, well, it's about religious freedom. It's the freedom of Catholics to be Catholic in Northern Ireland. But then you look at what Ireland was like structurally before the kind of mid 80s. I mean, it's almost theocratic. You know, I mean, it's nothing to do with religious freedom. It's the opposite. It's the kind of thing where if the local priest badmouths you, you're not going to get a job. You know, in that county type thing. You know, it's extremely extremely collectivistic and kind of upward oriented type of society that these leftists are supposedly backing. So again, I think it is that kind of, you know, as long as they can put in for the closed-ended cause and be seen to be doing the right thing at the right time, they just don't care. It's all optics.
And you think about how the Mujahideen was sold to us back in the 80s. They go into a James Bond film, you know, The Living Daylights. And it's, you know, the plucky locals kicking the Soviet bot out of Afghanistan, and you know, it's only just a short trip from there back to rock and roll and Coca-Cola. But this was a fantasy.
It became a truly global movement. It started when the BBC shocked the world with a report about the effect of a famine in Ethiopia. The response was Live Aid, organised by Bob Geldof. It was driven by a vast outpouring of sympathy for those who were starving in Ethiopia, but also by an anger and a frustration with all politicians in the West who had done nothing to help.
I find it incredible that the mass of people probably feel that something should be done, yet their own governments just don't do anything. They do very little. You know, the very fact that it has to be done by people giving their own money is ridiculous. I mean, we've given enough money into government. Why can't they spend some of our money giving it back?
I mean, at the moment, you've got a problem with the butter mountain. You don't know how to dispose of it. To sell to the Russians is the cheapest way.
I'm sorry, but butter doesn't do very much.
I'm duty bound to say, is there any greater obnoxious CUNT than Geldof, other than possibly Bono? I've always hated these two individuals in particular.
It's the kind of the desperate need for moral righteousness, isn't it? You know, it's that it's that kind of old idealism of if we just got rid of apartheid, if we just fed the Ethiopians, if we just, you know, helped out the Sumatrans, then the world would all be cushy and lovely, and there wouldn't be any problems. Also, I should say, I don't know if it counts as a conflict of interest, but Bob Geldof once went out with my mother.
Oh wow!
Was he any nicer in real life? Do you know?
Well, she didn't tell me about it, and I found it out of a friend after she passed away. But yeah, apparently they had quite a wild fling in 80s Camden Town. So a bit of hat deep lore there.
I can imagine. What did he say to it? Give us your fucking money.
I've desperately tried to ask for details, but no, I haven't got anything. I just know that it happened.
See, I always knew even when I was like pre-political in a way, irritated by Bob Geldof, something irritating about The Guardian, and I just think so much politics is personal disposition.
Yeah.
If you're the sort of person who just gets a little bit irritated by this, you're kind of like, it's almost like pre-written what your politics are going to be in a way. I mean, even though I'm a man of the sensible center left now, you understand what I'm saying, right? It's kind of this like,
yeah,
you know, and this is what I've said before, Simon, is that I think you get these figures on the left as well. You know, I mean, take someone like Peter Hitchens, who, you know, was a Trotskyite for some time. He was always destined to end up where he was. or someone like John Gray, who we've talked about many times. Okay, I mean, he kind of sits in this hazy grey zone somewhere. I've noticed Bastani thinks of him as a conservative. I think of him as a leftist. But he started out as a libertarian, right? Same as me. He was destined not to stay as a libertarian because of his disposition, his basic disposition, his pessimism.
So funnily enough, talking about Stalin a lot on this series, something I think is true about him is also true of what was said about Carlyle, which is that he could be rigid, he could be conservative, he could be radical, but never, even for an instant, could he be a liberal.
Exactly.
I mean, Stalin went from kind of preschool to being a Bolshevik overnight, pretty much. So, also, could I just point out, you mentioned about the contempt you have for people like Geldof here. I mean, just this image sums it all up for me. You've got Margaret Thatcher on the left, who, regardless of what what anyone thinks, ran a country during a time of great crisis for over a decade, non-stop. Every single day got up and did very, very difficult things, made all the kind of hard choices, kind of overcame all this stuff that you'd have to do just in the daily course of life to be that person. Being faced with a man who basically takes drugs and shouts through a microphone for a living. And look at the difference in their bearing here. He's glowering down at her with not an ounce of irony or restraint in his face. It sums up the whole problem of those types of people.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I could have never got into like proper Marxist circles and stuff, because there's always be some jumped up. It's like Rick from the Young Ones or something like that. There'll always be that individual, and he would wind me up too much.
Owen Jones does this kind of aggressive questioning. I notice with people on Twitter. I mean, we all know that, but you see how he's completely unrelenting in his desire to be as discourteous as possible. And the irony about this, of course, is Bob Geldof eventually helped in bringing private equity to Ethiopia. There was an organization called 8 Miles, which he uses to funnel investment into Ethiopia. He invested in a winery out there, put a few $100,000 in, and decided, as he said in his own words, we were going to use capitalism red in tooth and claw to change the circumstances of the Ethiopian people.
Do you remember right from the beginning, in one of the early episodes, there was a guy called Tiny Roland, who was the big businessman. Yeah. It's almost like he turned into Tiny Roland, like going to poor African places and just buying equity and capital and that kind of thing.
Yeah, someone should do the Cecil Rhodes meme with Bob Geldof standing over Africa.
Someone please make that. Yeah.
Somebody saying, was I alive in 1985? You've got to understand that if you were a teenager in the 90s, they pushed footage from that relentlessly. There was just, I mean, I think they were still showing it in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was just relentless Live Aid nostalgia and Live Aid callbacks, and Lenny Henry and Children in Need, and remember Bob Geldof, and here's Bob Geldof on TVAM with that bloke with a moustache, and let's have a look back at Live Aid. It was a massive deal. People forget about all this.
The Live Aid truth regime.
The entire concert was on a few weeks ago. I was at a friend's house, turned on the television to watch something, and it came onto Channel 4, and they were just showing all afternoon the entire concert. I mean, it never ends.
So yeah, it was a big thing, and the other big thing in the culture that was pushed a lot was Hasselhoff on the wall. I mean, it's like, you've got to remember when you're watching TV, the sheer number of endless mythologizing montage sequences. The montage sequence of it's Bob Geldof at Live Aid, it's Nelson Mandela, it's Hasselhoff on the wall, it's Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall, Reagan doing that speech. It was relentless, endlessly mythologized over and over and over again. And I do think that's something that the powers that be have lost as people have stopped watching TV. It's just the power of that repetition, of to forge these myths, because obviously nobody's going to choose to watch it. You know what I mean?
But in Africa, as you know,
Well,
it's great.
butter oil actually does. It is one of the major
Butter oil,
supplementary foods.
if you can get it.
Well, it is a byproduct of butter.
Yes. Yeah. Well, look, a lot is going. A lot of surplus food is going. But don't
Prime
forget,
Minister, there are millions dying, and that's the terrible thing.
Yes, indeed.
He said that with a cheeky smirk.
What Live Aid seemed to show was that it might be possible to change the world. But to do it, you had to bypass all politics, because politicians, both left and right, had become corrupted by power and petty nationalism. Instead, you connected directly with others suffering around the planet and rescued them. Bob Geldof travelled to Ethiopia to visit the camps where the aid was being delivered.
Honestly, Greta is a lot less obnoxious than him.
Yeah.
There's something really obnoxious about him. I can deal with Greta way more somehow. I don't know why.
Don't know what Mum saw in him.
But he began to realise that something very strange was happening. The Ethiopian regime was rounding up thousands of the starving people who had come to the camps. They were being taken to airstrips, where they were loaded at gunpoint onto giant transport planes. They were then flown to what were called resettlement camps. Geldof was shocked by what he was seeing. To him, it seemed to evoke an evil ghost from Europe's past.
The first pictures we saw of resettlement were these ancient and beautiful people starving and in rags, under armed guard, going into these vast Russian plains. They probably have never seen a plane. They have nothing left, only their dignity. And to the West, the immediate psychological reaction is Jews being led at gunpoint into cattle trucks by the Nazis.
What Geldof had stumbled upon was something that those who ran Ethiopia had been trying to hide.
Pause.
That the food brought in by Live Aid.
I was just going to say that little speech of his, an ancient and beautiful people, it's kind of peak Guardianista, atrocity porn phrasing. They've got nothing left but their dignity, It's all this kind of wringing the sentimental rag hard.
One of the real... Do you remember I made that series, The Economic Policies That Fail, blah, 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 blah? One of the most extraordinary ones I remember putting together was the one on Ethiopia, because the fact that it was born of a massive civil war and communist policies was never made explicit in all this Live Aid stuff. It was just like, oh, there's a famine.
Yeah.
Give money. Look at Bob Geldof. The actual context was never provided in all those. It was never. And I couldn't believe I was in my 30s when I made that, and I was like, nobody'd ever told it. It's never been made explicit in any single way, and I still think most people don't know what led to the famine in Ethiopia.
Most normies assume that famines are just something that happens for no apparent reason in places like Africa. I mean, you just see them on the telly. Oh, look, they've got no food. Again, they never tell you why. But just on the point of Geldof, something that occurred to me is a couple of days ago I was reading in it was some collected work of the Soho journalist Jeffrey Bernard, where he happened to be standing in a pub with Mick Jagger, I think, or some kind of rock star, some youngish rock star at the time, and all of a sudden they were just having a normal conversation, and the rock star just burst into tears, like absolutely broke down into tears, saying, "Oh, I just don't know what to do. I've got all this money and all these birds coming after me. I just don't know what to do. It's breaking me." And apparently this is something that happens, is that if you're just some kid who becomes a really famous pop star or something, and you're suddenly overnight just worth more money than you could ever spend in a lifetime, it basically has some kind of weird it gives you this strange kind of paranoia and sense that you've done nothing to earn it, even if you've sold records or whatever. And I think that's what produces this Bob Geldof thing. That's what produces this. It's this really driven sense of guilt at the
it's a class-based
survivor
guilt. Yeah,
it is, because once you're at that level, especially if you do it through a means like being famous, there isn't anything you really can't get. There isn't anything there isn't any earthly thing, no matter how immoral or hard to come by, that you can't get your hands on it ultimately with that kind of money and status. So, you know, I suppose it's just a case of, well, now that I'm suddenly catapulted up to the top of the pyramid of wealth, you know, how the hell do I live with having it, basically, which seems to be what drives this.
Was being used as a weapon in a civil war. Ethiopia's ruler was a brutal tyrant called Colonel Mengistu. Mengistu had decided that the only way to win the war was through a massive piece of social engineering. He was going to literally move millions of people out of the rebel areas in the north and relocate them in the empty south, where they could no longer fight. And the food aid was being used as bait to lure hundreds of thousands of people into the refugee camps, where his troops then swooped in and rounded them up. Live Aid was an extraordinary achievement. It is estimated that it may have cut the death toll in the famine by a half. But the group, Médecins Sans Frontières, made the dramatic claim that the aid might have also led to the same amount of deaths as it had saved. The mass relocations were so brutal, they said, that over 100,000 people had died. It showed the weakness at the heart of the growing humanitarian movement. That when they came face to face with a brutal ruler like Colonel Mengistu, who was using their aid not to save people, but to save himself, and kill thousands more in the process, they had no way of stopping him. They couldn't challenge power.
I only wish I'd been born a woman, then I'd have the same privilege as women, as all the sort of women's livers who sort of shout off about burning your bras and all the rest of it. They can still marry, I can't. So I've got to try that little bit harder by wearing makeup and trying to look good all the time, feminists liking it or not.
I think that if a woman's got pride in herself and wants to look attractive and wants to wear makeup, then I don't know, more people will turn and look at a fully made up woman.
Well, it ain't right, men dressing up as women. Yeah. Man, they're just a bunch of quiz, aren't they? You know. Oh. What?
How do you know?
We got one in our school, haven't we? Mr. Yeah. In papers and everything. He goes around touching all the kids' legs. You wouldn't like to be a quiz. Go down the road touching men's bollocks and everything.
These guys are in the chat now.
I was going to say, it's a young Horus.
Well, she wasn't doing that, was she?
I don't know. It's not a she, is it? It's a he. Trying to be a she.
Julia Grant was now living as a woman.
Out of the mouths of babes.
While she carried on being interviewed by the NHS psychiatrist.
Just literally just the last return or something.
Yeah. Oh, just for the person in the chat who was asking about the aid trucks. Yes, we did talk about them in a previous stream on the Charlie Brooker short films. Curtis did a bit on the Live Aid and Bob Geldof stuff there, which he's reincorporated into this doco. The aid was essentially siphoned off for the military to then sell and then to buy arms to fight the Civil War.
She was becoming increasingly frustrated and angry with the process. And she decided to challenge the power the psychiatrist had over her. She travelled to the south coast to see a surgeon at a private clinic. She went with her partner Amir. He was a refugee who had fled persecution in Iraq. The surgeon agreed to give Julia breast implants. And after the operation, Julia went to confront the psychiatrist.
Because I'm supposed to be directing your case, because it's primarily a psychiatric matter. And I must confess I take exception to your doing that.
Well, I thought it was something permanent. I needed something to establish that I was doing what I was doing.
It's a medical matter. It isn't a personal choice. I like to be informed. See, once again, you're overstepping the mark, and I don't like it, one bit. I don't wish to appear to be petulant, but really you're not arranging this affair in a manner that fits our protocol. We like to do it in our way. then we know what's going on. And I don't like people who step out of line. I find it, to say the very least, irritating.
Well, I'm finding having difficulties with the guy I'm living with.
So do many of my patients with their associates. Why should you be different? I don't think you can...
I mean, essentially, that's what people want the doctor to be, this guy.
Yeah.
People now want the doctor to be this guy.
I've never heard a doctor just talk just smack down a patient like that. You know,
Yeah.
I don't like people who step out of line.
And this is perhaps contributory to why the discussion around gender transition or sexual biological transition was re-energized because this documentary ran for a long period, 20 years, 79 to 99, with sort of regular updates, on how Julia Grant was doing. And the condition of filming the sessions with a psychiatrist was that he wouldn't be identified. He was later identified as a doctor called John Randell. He was actually Welsh. He was from Glamorgan, and a lot of the you can see that the sympathy of the viewer is going to be directed away from him because of the way in which he speaks.
He's a Welsh hero.
And addresses
Welsh hero.
Julia here. He's signally sort of unsympathetic. I know he's going to say, "Now get out" in a minute.
I mean, they do have this kind of troons that persecution complex around the NHS and health in general. Because do you remember in the kind of 2010s, their big target wasn't the state or the right. It was specifically the NHS. The NHS was fascist and evil and full of TERFs because it wouldn't let them have infinite, free reassignment surgery. Kind of thing. I think probably they do. There is some kind of weird bone to pick with them over this. Maybe this is where it got started.
Conducted yourself particularly tactfully in all this. And there I think the interview will end. Thank you very much. You better come and see me in another 3 months.
Why can't I have the operation? Why can't I pay for it? They don't like that. They like you to be very placid and to sit there and just do as you're told. And if you don't do as you're told, then you're going against the system, and then the system won't help. After all, it's my mind. I know what I want. Nobody else can get inside me.
Julia went back north to see her family, to tell them that she was going to defy the medical establishment. She would find a way to pay for the operation herself. She travelled through the old industrial cities, where many of the factories were now closing, in the wave of deindustrialisation that was sweeping through Britain.
Factories and terraced houses. That's all it is.
Can we pause?
Like coronation.
Sorry, just to say, do you remember a show called Ripping Yarns?
Yes.
The Monty Python. This does come off rather like an episode of Ripping Yarns, doesn't it? A young northern lad who wants to troon.
The testing of Julia Althwaite, or something.
Yeah. But sorry, Simon.
No, you go on.
Well, just this image here of just this kind of very bulky northern transsexual just staring out over just the dereliction of 70s Britain. It's a very, I was going to say, I was a very queer image, but I didn't mean it quite like that. But
Well, the way it's been put together is kind of powerfully. I mean, as Curtis often says in some of his documentaries, and then a terrible logic kind of took over, because you're seeing this contrast with, Julia Grant going back up north, and you're seeing the country is being deconstructed by capital.
Yeah.
And yet in the end, she goes to have an operation by a private surgeon, and this is the attempt to reconstruct the body by capital. So essentially there's a sort of logic saying, well, the free market, if you want to change yourself, knock yourself out, go and buy that operation. So it kind of becomes irresistible in a way, because you're arguing then on the terms of the free market in support of the progressive agenda.
Incredible.
Street, isn't it? That whole view is amazing. Back to back.
In the mid-1980s,
Pause.
a young girl called Chai Ling had...
Just before we go into this, yeah, I see people in the chat. That track, yeah, it's actually the Smiths. There's a Light That Never Goes Out from the Queen Is Dead album, 1986. It's a sort of electro-funk version by... yeah.
There's quite a backlash in the chat to that.
Yeah.
It triggered a lot of autism, I'm guessing.
Yeah, the track's called "The Light 3000" by someone called Schneider TM and KPT Michigan. But yeah, it's just a cover of the Smiths song, but reconstructed again in a kind of Frankensteinian way.
Everything is new.
come from the provinces to study psychology at Beijing University. She became fascinated by an American psychologist called Abraham Maslow. He taught that the human beings of the future would be driven by what he called self-actualization. They would be guided only by what they felt inside, not by what they were told to do.
These are the people who would resist suggestions. They would choose what they wanted to do. You might urge them to do something, and somebody else might urge them, but it was their decision. Doing what they themselves decided to do, they look within, making real the inner self, which is independent of the century, independent of the culture even.
Then one night, Chai Ling was drugged and, she believed, raped by another student. But the authorities did nothing. And she decided to join the growing student protests against what they saw as a corrupt regime that was now in charge of China. Deng Xiaoping had got rid of both revolutionary ideas and democracy. And in that void, corruption had taken over the whole society. Party officials everywhere were looting billions of dollars. All that mattered now in China was money and connections.
The first thing in life is money. And the second thing is connections. It is very important to have connections. When you know people, then wherever you go, things become so much easier.
In April 1989, the one leader that the students trusted, Hu Yaobang, died of a heart attack at a party meeting. Students started to come to Tiananmen Square to mourn him. Chai Ling was among them. And as more and more people came to the square, she became one of the most vocal of the protesters. Soon, over 1 million protesters filled the square. But the government refused the students' demands for more democracy. And the movement...
just so extraordinarily based.
I was going to say... sorry.
Just to say, no. There's a million... Yeah, that was just not going to do it.
Would Stalin have let it get this far?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. He was a pragmatist. It's a very difficult set of circumstances. His instincts may have been different in this moment versus the moment he found himself in.
And I suppose his regime kind of came before all this more kind of liberal, more affluent type of leftism, didn't it? This kind of... I mean, all of that was got out of the way by Lenin early on, wasn't it? He wrote that essay on against left-wing communism, didn't he?
Yeah, Stalin's mode was more to try to use what he called revolution from below. So he would have tried to stage like a million-man march pro-Stalin against some patsy in the middle, against some, figure that's failed the regime or, Moscow trial or whatever else. And he actually used it as a constant strategy to try to keep the middle layer in line. It was called criticism from the party, where basically like workers, the normal people, these people that you're seeing here, were encouraged to have these kind of like rant sessions, sessions of criticism. And if you were the Soviet apparatchik commissar, whatever, you just had to sit there and take it. Otherwise they'd write to Comrade Stalin, and there was almost it's going to sound like a very weird analogy, right? But there's that cope on Twitter, always chimp, because the Trump admin might listen. Trump might actually listen to you, right? This actually existed in the Soviet Union. If Stalin found out about this, he might do something about it.
So always chimp.
If Uncle Joe knew about this, you watch out. I mean, maybe they were following Stalin's orders, right? But they didn't know that. So that's how he kind of managed things. But when it came to quote unquote democracy, the democracy worked for him.
Started to split. The radical faction.
Of course, unlike Trump, there was no taco. There was no Stalin always chickened out.
No.
Stalin always followed through.
Yeah. Well, this is it. You threatening hard power only works if you've got the hard power to back it up. If you get bluffed, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's as simple as that. And at the moment, America just is. I mean, just over the past 20 years, the drop in hard power has been catastrophic, isn't it? They just can't do it anymore.
Well, they've dropped the soft power, and they're like, right, we're going to go to hard power, but we're not prepared to use it.
But there's no hard power.
I mean,
what are you going to do? Yeah.
Began a hunger strike to try and force the government to respond. Chai Ling had now risen to become one of the leaders of the radical movement. She later wrote that the experience made her an independent woman. She herself was liberated and became a self-actualizer. But many of the other student leaders were frightened that she was going to create disaster. The government was still refusing to negotiate, and the protest leaders held a tense meeting. Many of them argued that they should retreat now on such a high, which would force the party to accept real reform. If they didn't, there would be stalemate and then killing. In the vote, Chai Ling raised her hand, which made it unanimous. But that evening she changed her mind, and she helped persuade the students to stay in the square. The next day she called an American journalist called Phil Cunningham and gave an extraordinary interview. Chai Ling had suddenly realized that combining the new force of individualism with collective action was never going to work. She felt the contradiction deep within herself. She had realized that in the age of the individual, it was no longer going to be possible for people to give up their lives for a greater cause.
To be honest, from the day I called for a hunger strike, I knew we would not get any results. Certain people, certain causes are bound to fail. I have been very clear about this all along, but I've made an effort to present a staunch image, to show that we were striving for victory. But deep down, I knew it was all futile. All along, I've kept it to myself, because being Chinese, I felt I shouldn't badmouth the Chinese. But I can't help thinking sometimes, and I might as well say it. You, the Chinese, you are not worth my struggle. You are not worth my sacrifice. The students keep asking, what should we do next? What can we accomplish? I feel so sad. Because how can I tell them that what we are actually hoping for is bloodshed? For the moment when the government has no choice but to brazenly butcher the people. Only when the square is awash with blood will the people of China open their eyes. Only then will they really be united.
Are you going to stay in the square yourself?
No, I won't. I'm not going to let myself be destroyed by this government. I want to live.
Pause.
5 days later.
Well, we all know what's going to happen, but her saying that what we're hoping for is bloodshed. This is ultimate faith in accelerationism. When the square is awash with blood, only then will the people of China open their eyes. But this was a fantasy. I think this speaks to the current moment. I just want to say.
That was bizarre. I mean, that was really weird, that footage. I mean, it's almost like it definitely felt like she was talking through a script, like, kind of constantly sort of throwing in the jittery crying voice and then saying all these lines. I mean, it just felt off. I mean, I would not be surprised if it's been discovered or will be discovered in the future that she was working for intelligence, whether it was Chinese or American or something else. I mean, it seems incredibly strange that she said in such flagrant terms exactly what did end up happening, and also just went, "Oh, but I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be inside self-actualizing. Everyone else has to die to achieve my vision." It's just weird.
And in that tradition of Chinese dissidence, she was also green carded out and taken to America, where she now speaks about freedom.
Well. There you go.
But she had a lot of kind of. I'll post up the clips of that interview. They were from a larger documentary that was put out. I'm trying to just find the name of it. It was something about like The Gates of Heaven, I think it's called. But I think she criticized it later. In fact, she tried to sue the documentary makers and saying, "Oh, well, the things I said were taken out of context, or they were mistranslated."
That bit where she said everyone else has to die, out of
Yeah,
context,
but
out of context.
It was kind of as stark as that. Yeah, they did ask her, "Will you continue to stay in Tiananmen Square?" She said no, and they said, "Why?" She said, "Because I'm not the same as everybody else. I'm a person who is already marked as, quote, most wanted. I will not be content to be murdered by such a government. I want to live. That's what I'm thinking right now. I don't know if people will think that I'm selfish, but I believe that the work I'm doing now needs someone to carry on, because such democracy movements need more than one person. Could you not and she says at the end, could you not disclose these words?" So yeah.
Off the record.
That was pretty much it. She spent a lot of time kind of attacking other people in the movement. There was a lot of kind of what we might call e-drama now, but she encouraged them all to kind of stay put, and we all kind of know what happened.
She has agitator written all over her. I'm convinced it was just some intelligence network was controlling her. I mean, there's no way. Yeah, has to be. It glows like radium. It's all over it.
It has been mentioned, and by the way, when I looked into this stuff, the Tiananmen Square massacre, I hadn't realized it didn't actually take place in Tiananmen Square. Basically, it was the US about 15 years ago. WikiLeaks released some US cables from the time saying, no, what the people who were still in the square were allowed to leave. What happened was the students had kind of barricaded areas of the city. They'd sort of, turned buses to block streets and things like that. And it was as people went into the city that the Chinese troops and riot police came in and started getting into combat with these students who barricaded these areas of the city. And one of the problems for the students is they barricaded the areas so well they couldn't escape. So they ended up being massacred in the shopping area further down from Tiananmen Square.
Brilliant.
So
it's like the exact opposite of Chaz. Remember Chaz, where they tried to take they barricaded themselves in so well they were trapped.
Yeah, it was about 3 miles away from the square. There's an area called Mujidai, and they'd stopped to kind of try and halt the army advancing, but the army had AK-47s.
Also, do either of you know about this idea that I've never read this, but it's something that people say a lot in these circles, is that the original protest started over Africans being housed in student dorms?
Yeah, I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, apparently there was like some Marxist African students were being put in a Chinese dorm mixed in with Chinese students, and they started a protest over that, which then mushroomed into what became Tiananmen.
So you're saying foreigners were being moved into areas, and then people were protesting about it, and then getting perilously close to taking on the government. Oh, yeah, interesting.
Could you imagine if one day Starmer just sent the tanks in? Can you imagine if he did that? Like they just out of nowhere decided, you know what? I've had enough of being a weak man. I've had enough of all this stuff. I'm sick of all this anti-immigration, stuff. I'm just going to send in, the hussars or something.
Oh, could never happen, could it?
In a way, I'd be there for it. In a way, I'd be there for it.
Yeah. Just a load of reform supporters being run over by Challenger 2s in Southend or something.
But what about Magna Carta? Bang! Oh. I'm only joking, of course. I'm only joking. I love my reform supporting friends. Right, let's carry on. We've gone quite well, Simon.
Good.
Today.
Good.
33 minutes.
Oh, if we go for an extra, we have 4 or 5 minutes, something like that, we'll be well in to the right where we should be.
Right.
Sounds good.
Deng Xiaoping sent the troops and tanks in to clear the square.
Starmbot, this is the international rules-based order. I am the law. Oh,
if only you'd do it,
Oh man.
Blair would.
See, the thing is, Blair, ever the fox. What would Blair have done here? He'd have let the thing happen. He wouldn't have sent the tank. He would have just let the whole thing play out. They feel like they had a big victory. Government continues. That's what Blair.
Yeah.
Blair is just the, people forget. They'll move on. Tomorrow's another day. Ride it out. So it's actually the number one lesson I've learned from Tony Blair. Is just like, how many times? Think of it. Keir Starmer. Oh, it's definitely over for Starmer now. He has to go now. It's definitely over for Starmer now. Doesn't do anything.
No.
Rides it out. I mean, Blair was a lot better at it than Starmer. It's like, how can I put it? Like, the reason he was Teflon Tony was just because he just, it'd be like, I remember it happening. Oh, there's there's a scandal, something, whatever, dissension in the cabinet, whatever it was. And it'd be like, Blair has to play with his kids this weekend or whatever. And then he'd turn up on Monday as if nothing had happened at all. Just move on with the next order of business. It was remarkable in a way.
He was such a master at playing that like privileged Live Aid type of person that made up the bulk of the political kind of noise box at the time, because he would do something like, okay, maybe he'd take a hit over something like Iraq, but he'd come out at Princess Di's funeral, wouldn't he? And just effortlessly, without a single physical or vocal flaw, just massage everyone back into loving him like he was some sort of god. And then of course Starmer can't do that. Starmer can't win back trust he's lost. He can only take the hits.
I mean, the thing is, I would make a distinction between the early Blair and late Blair within the 10 years that he was there. And he was different after Iraq, right? But he still had a way of getting, like, he'd do things like, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but he'd do things like turn up on Football Focus and have a chat with Alan Shearer about how much he loves, and
did you see that ludicrous display last night? Yeah.
Right, but he'd make a point, right, of going on football. It sounds so ridiculous, but he'd be like chatting to Ray Stubbs, and when normal politicians talk about football, they're like, "Oh yes, I hope my team wins. Who's your favorite player?" Wayne Rooney. Or but he'd make a point of like naming a right back or some obscure, some lesser person that only somebody into football would know.
Paolo Maldini.
To make it seem like he was actually into the thing. And he had this way of it'd just be like, okay, now we're back, now we're back type thing. He did that a lot. But anyway.
Well,
so.
just also AA, just to ask you on this, do you remember when Southport happened, and at the time you were saying, well, Starmer can't come back from Southport, right? This is going to be the blow to him. Do you think with events that have happened since that basically he can just do a Blair and pretend it didn't happen at this point?
No, I think the damage from Southport has been lasting, because what it meant was he could never win back the right in the country, because he stood up there and called half the country far right. That was a critical error that I just don't think he can ever fully recover from, because I mean, look, he's doing a lot of the stuff that you want him to do, and he just gets no credit at all for anything that happens. Now, a 70% reduction in net immigration. You know, if he hadn't have called people that at Southport, and if he had a slightly better PR team, and if Tony was there and so on, they would have just made hay with that all day. Like, you wouldn't have been able to move without Blair bashing you on the head with, we reduced immigration by 70%.
Yeah.
Right. And he would have had rebuttals to all of the right-wing counters. Right. And he would have shredded Kemi Badenoch in Parliament and all of the Jenrick and all of these people. And he would have had the facts and figures there, and he would have read them out, and he would have just had this way of owning the narrative such that that 70%, which is basically just made no splash at all in the news at all, would have been the dominant note of the tail half of last year, right? This is what last year is 2026 now. Yeah, that's the difference. And it's just like, they don't have the personnel, they don't have the discipline in the machine. They don't have in a way, they don't have the unity as well. I mean, there were cracks between the Brownites and the Blairites, but there's a lot of stuff that Starmer just can't do, both because of his football manager stats, but also because of the reality of the Labour Party now as well. So, but you're right, Starmer's going to sit there until 2029 as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And he may even win still. Don't count that out.
Well, I was thinking that purely because I don't think reform is going to last till 2029. It's just not. I don't see them holding together that long.
That's also a possibility. They could implode, or
I'm sure they will, because if Nigel Farage wanted to be prime minister, as Alex Masters was saying on here the other day, he'd be doing things like putting together policy, building a shadow government, doing all this stuff, and it's just clearly he isn't seriously planning on leading the country. It's just he enjoys being permanent opposition. Whether he can leave it and the movement can, take on a life of its own, maybe. But even then, it's not really going to. Then it really is just Tories too, isn't it? Because it's just Nadeem Zawawi and Suella Braverman, running a Hindu interest party basically at that point. So,
Don't forget, the world will look very different if Trump is brought down or Democrats win, or all of those things. There's so many, and that's part of the game plan, I think, of the globalist, players, the Carneys and Starmers and so on. It's like, we can ride this out for a couple of years and then just keep the band together. This lot will discredit themselves. We'll be back, type thing.
Well, I mean, it looks like Trump may well just kill populism by just doing it wrong. I mean, just being incompetent and managing the optics so badly that.
Well, try saying that in an article on Substack by Panama Hat.
That's why I don't do it.
See what backlash may emerge from this. But absolutely.
Well, I mean, because as you say, what's going to happen is now anyone that supported MAGA is going to get tied with, oh, well, there were these right-wing death squads that went around killing people in American cities because Trump got elected. That's going to be the narrative for 100 years in the textbooks now, isn't it? You can just see it coming a mile away.
Well, if MAGA lose, which is contingent on Trump having the will not to taco, which he doesn't.
No, he doesn't really care. He's not going to, He's just going to go back to, playing the stock market in New York or whatever it is he does when he's not.
So, I
doing
mean, I was
politics.
considering writing a rebuttal to the 10,000 word defense piece somebody wrote on fucking Matt Walsh, or I could just ignore it and be like, yeah, okay, let's just wait 6 months and see who's
Do a
right.
tone. Do
Yeah, exactly.
do a tone. Just write it out. Focus on other things. Go and chat about football.
Exactly.
Pause. Just another little bit there where Curtis is as has been discussed at various points throughout the series, he uses animals, like I mentioned earlier about the spider, and you've got the little bird there, a bit of an echo of the shot in Hypernormalization with the British soldier with the bird on his finger held long. I mean, I think the points he's making there, and I think he is making a point, is that there's a world that's oblivious to all of these kinds of hyper curated and rationalist ideas of how to change the world. The animals, nature is kind of indifferent to what is going on in your plans. He frequently uses animals as these kind of motifs of the nature that continues, that is real, like he did in the Mayfair set, all the kind of birds of prey, which he's kind of likening to the Spiv entrepreneurs. But he's also using animals in this kind of sense of, there's the idea of the world in your head, and there's the actual world as it functions. And again, his theme in this series is people are kind of trying to enforce change, but they're not addressing the ideas that exist in people's heads, and they're just thinking that the idea in their heads is what nature is and can become. And they're trying to force things, as we're seeing at the moment. There's select groups of people who are trying to influence things, thinking that the rest of the country or that is paying attention to what goes on Twitter, which it isn't.
Boris Yeltsin was the president of the new Russia. He had promised to turn the country into a mass democracy. Yeltsin appointed a group of young technocrats, and they set out to do this through what they called shock therapy, advised by Western bankers and economists. They believed that they had to move fast, because the communists might try and take power again. But behind it was a grander, utopian idea, that it might start the spread of democracy all around the world.
Go on, say it, Adam. Say it, say it, say it. I've never wanted him to say it more.
But at this very moment, in the West, the opposite started to happen. The whole idea of mass democracy began to be questioned and undermined from inside the political establishment itself. It began almost unnoticed, hidden behind the wave of enthusiasm after the fall of communism. But a political scientist called Peter Mayer has argued that what happened in the 1990s was that the old idea of democracy started to disappear in the West. And it was replaced by something else, which we haven't fully comprehended yet, or even seen, because it is outside the old categories of politics. Western politicians, Mayer said, literally changed their roles. They gave up being representatives of the people, and instead, they became the agents of a new bureaucracy, which was rising up and promising that it could manage the dangerous and unpredictable force of individualism better than the politicians could. Just as the activists in China had found with Chai Ling, individualism and its drive to self-actualization can corrode and eat away at the collective power of mass democracy.
Pause.
Peter Mayer said the...
So yeah, he's quite an interesting guy, Irish political scientist. He died in 2011, and his book "Ruling the Void: The Hollowing of Western Democracy" is probably interesting to go back and look at. He effectively said that party democracy, the age of party democracy, ended around this period in the 90s. It was completely, politics was completely hollowed out. And he talked about this as the void, the disconnection between the citizens and their political entities. And several things went on. He said basically mass parties lost their roots in society and they became professionalized, state-centered organizations. Electoral competition was cartelized, he said. The parties colluded to limit real choice, especially on economic policy. And thus you turn politics into a sort of technocratic and managerial pursuit. Voters eventually withdrew, and the turnouts have declined. Party memberships have collapsed. People lost trust in politics, and elites also withdrew as they kind of started to invest in unelected bodies like EU institutions, central banks, expertise bureaucracies, and so left-right ideology. Competition that's mostly disappeared, and that's replaced by consensus politics on market liberalism. And
Blair turned this to his advantage. I mean, this is the whole thing, wasn't it? Oh well, no one's coming out to vote, that means everyone's happy.
Yeah,
it's not about politics anymore. It's about Britannia and being civic and doing things like creating the Welsh and Scottish Parliament to kind of it's completely breaking with the old mold and just making everything more individualistic, aren't you? More kind of more weirdly local and less old-fashioned, but somehow more state-driven.
You know what I find somewhat devastating sometimes, Simon, is that you realise that the left came to all our conclusions like literally 20 years ago. On like every single issue, they're already there. They've already figured it out.
This is why I bring all this sort of left cultural theory in, because it's evident when you look back at the stuff they were talking about. I'm afraid that they were there. I mean, Mayer talked about a golden age between the 50s and the 70s, when you had parties with strong social roots and actual ideological choice, and that just was displaced.
You've got to understand the culture at the time as well. Again, being a teenager in the 90s, that I always say that the title of Nirvana's Nevermind, and then the title of that Oasis song, Whatever, Nevermind, Whatever. They really do sum up the attitude of the era, where if you were politically engaged or you wanted to talk about politics, you were literally a fucking weirdo. It's like, how can I put it? Like
Tory boy.
It wasn't even like, it was no left, or it was kind of like not the done thing to care too much about anything really. Anything at all. Even if you were into like films a bit too much, you were kind of a nerd, or if you like, do you know what I mean? There was a set parameter of nonchalance that everybody had to affect in a way.
Earnestness and sincerity weren't cool.
No, you had, and so you had to affect this kind of, I don't really care, whatever, man, and that was very much in the ether pretty much until the Iraq War, which changed a lot of stuff, I would say. I mean, first 9/11 was a jolt, and then the Iraq War was when people started to talk about politics again, and then it was mainly to, protest it, go to protest and things like that. I, of course, supported the Iraq War and tone for my sins in the name of pragmatism and realism and realpolitik and so on. And if I had to be born and live all over again, I'd do it again. All right, let's carry on.
It was you that put Saddam in that hole. You put him in there with your affluent Daria-esque liberalism. You condemned him to the hole.
Just one last quote from Mayer here, which is interesting to reflect on, because he said, "It may seem odd to forecast the end of the age of party democracy at a time when, by many measures, democracy is more pervasive than ever before." So he's talking there, I think, about the fact that the messaging is that democracy is so important, and here's more democracy, and we need to drive things towards being more democratic, when in reality, none of that is actually happening. It's all heading in the opposite direction. The rhetoric versus the reality.
All right. Are we kind of done here, Simon, or do you want to eke out a couple more minutes?
We can, if you like, if you
Get
want.
40.
See how you feel. Oh, well,
Get to
that
40.
would be...
All right.
Go on.
Nice round number.
The same was now happening in the West. The first politician to confront this was Bill Clinton. He came to power promising to represent what he called the forgotten middle class. But very quickly, within weeks of entering the White House, Clinton agreed to give up on many of his promised reforms and to give power over to the financial world. He did this not through any cynical motive, but because he knew that the old power base of mass politics had gone. No one joined political parties anymore. Organised labour was a vanishing force. Clinton might be in office, but he no longer had the collective power of the people behind him. The power that in the past had allowed politicians to challenge the elites in society.
We know big government does not have all the answers. We know there's not a program for every problem.
Not kidding you. I've just had an email from a very well-known newspaper saying, "Can we talk about your term sloppyism?" Holy shit! What am I going to do? Anyway,
I wouldn't go near it. I wouldn't go near it.
Anyway, let's God's sake.
Great to see you in The Guardian.
Help with my sensible centre-left stuff. I'd be like, "Oh, I'll tell you another thing. I was really impressed by that speech by Mark Carney."
Leftist Iranian academic.
Oh man.
The era of big government is over.
If the new bureaucracy delivered on their promises, it was going to be a wonderful world.
If I do it, I'll go electric. Simon, I'll go electric.
Judas.
Funny joking.
But if something went wrong, then the politicians would have no power with which to confront them. The shift in politics had begun. In Russia, the democracy experiment had gone out of control. The president, Boris Yeltsin, had lost all power. It had been seized by a small group called the oligarchs, who were using it to loot Russia.
Did they call themselves the oligarchs? It made it sound like they'd like, "Oh yeah, there's a new stable in town. We're the oligarchs."
I somehow think that's a name we came up with.
There was massive inflation. Millions of people were reduced to selling what they owned on the street.
Pause.
The life expectancy...
Just quickly on the inflation figures here. Curtis is talking about 1993. He's leading up to the kind of constitutional crisis where the army attacked the Russian parliament in October. In 1993, the annual inflation rate was about 840%. Monthly was about 55 to 60%, which is a great improvement on the previous year, 1992, where the annual inflation rate was 2,500%. So, yeah, everything was going well.
A Freddo frog would be sort of £1,000, wouldn't it?
And this was as a result of the shock therapy, where you tried to liberalize the prices massive money printing, the ruble zone collapsed, etc.
Shock therapy. It's got to be one of those terms to just run away from, isn't it? Because every country where the libertarian theoreticians come in and go, we got this amazing idea called shock therapy to, liberalism and capitalism is going to come in, and it just wrecks the place worse than socialism did, doesn't it? It just ruins, trashes everything.
So when our economy collapses and Jeffrey Sachs turns up and tells you to do some shock therapy, and don't.
Still, one of the absolute best books on this is False Dawn by aforementioned John Gray. One of my great influences in escaping libertarianism. If he goes into each one of them, including ones that people have forgotten about, like there was an attempt in Mexico, there was an attempt in every single place they tried it. Liberalization, disaster after disaster. But also he goes into the nuts and bolts mechanics of it actually as a centralization, as a tool of greater centralization in a bizarre way.
Well, and as always, there's normally a class of oligarchs who get rich off it, who are kind of angling for it.
Buy up all the assets, yeah.
Yeah. Also, just someone in the chat pointed out that we appear to be seeing a Basil Fawlty approaching on the right there.
Let's have a look again.
John
Reduced to
Cleese
selling
appeared.
what they own on the street. The life expectancy of the Russian man from 65 in 1987 to 58 in 1993. There was fury in the Russian parliament. Its leader accused Yeltsin of economic genocide and demanded that he stop the experiment.
Pause. That grey-haired guy, that was Anatoly Shabad. He was a miner he'd become an MP. It's kind of like if you imagine Dennis Skinner goes and attacks, David Cameron.
Well, also, I think it was Bowden who said Russia will never ever forgive the West, basically, for giving them this, for kind of going, oh, it's okay. We're going to give you this system of free markets and sort of happy liberty. And then Russia was just, as they said, they were just looted. I mean, all the wealth that had been very slowly and very kind of shakily, admittedly, built up through the last century after the various things they'd been through was just ripped off and flown away to London. I mean, it was just gone. It gone overnight. Russia was left penniless, and there isn't ever going to be that type of regime in Russia again, because no one's ever going to get over this robbery, and I think quite rightly.
I still think, again, value free, whatever happens in the future, Putin will always be remembered as a hero in Russia.
Yeah,
for saving them from this.
Well, I mean, this gave him his career. I mean, he came in as the guy whose job it was to put Russia back into as a kind of major power, as to stop it just being this backwards, bankrupt basket case. I mean, he there's people who have differing views on exactly if he's managed to do that, but he's fixed a lot of the damage that they sustained during the kind of capitalist 90s, where it was in some regions just anarchy run by gangs, this kind of thing. Brutal.
And there was a two-part process. There was in the parliament where a lot of the stuff got sort of effectively expropriation got snuck through. 60,000 farms were given away. 15% of retail was just given to private interests off the bat, and a lot more. And at the same time, there was a kind of process whereby the people consented because they were given these coupons for ownership of part ownership of state industries, which the oligarchs then bought up for a song. So there's an element of that as well.
We should also point out that oligarch is perhaps a more polite term for men of a certain background.
I remember reading stories in this late 90s, early 2000s, when it was really at its height. I remember reading this story of that they were so rich, right? They were so obscenely wealthy that they used to do things like cosplay and LARP as homeless people to get a taste of what life on the streets was like and stuff like this. That was just, I mean, I'd never forget that story. It was in like Time magazine. I was reading it on a plane in like Time magazine or something. And it was just,
Did you?
Isn't that horrible? Just so horrible.
Well, it is terrible. And do you remember the thing about in the late 90s on the Russian internet? Some oligarchs would buy up entire military bases, like they'd buy an entire tank corps, just for a couple of million. And at one point, a nuclear warhead ended up on the equivalent of eBay. Like someone actually listed a nuclear bomb just on eBay, just openly. Yeah, you can just buy it. Just being publicly traded. I mean, it was a very strange time.
All right. Well, I think we're at the fort.
Yeah.
We'll remember this woman and this here. We'll have to come back to it. And you're back next week, Pat, as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Standing in.
Excellent.
Fantastic. Well, there are a couple of super chats and things which we should have a look at. In terms of entropy, it's on. I don't see anything on there. In terms of actual super chats, we've got Zaphodox, who has sent 398 Hong Kong dollars, which is probably a sizable chunk of change given the color that it's gone on. That's what they go on. He says, "Thank you for the pre-Curtis banter. It's precious."
And I would like the Communist Party of China to acknowledge that Zaphodox completely supports the People's Republic of China and its government.
Oh, you watch this cheering on the Tiananmen Square crackdowns.
Yes.
Yeah. Coney Current Year says, "Hat, your video was the best thing I've watched this year so far. It summed up so much of what I've been feeling these last few months."
Well, it's a very, very high accolade. Thank you very much, Coney. I mean, I do think that basically that's more or less where we are. It's just I mean, even like 5-6 years ago, there was a feeling that we were in kind of a coherent right wing. There was something there. Now there's just nothing. I mean, we're just stuck in kind of open desert, as it were, just watching the sand get blown away. I mean, AA's become a Stalinist. I'm really into Pol Pot nowadays. I mean, I actually am. No, I was reading because he was one of these communist leaders who I felt always gets short shrift. And you were talking about your kind of push on revisionism. He's the one. He's never had like a major kind of revisionist movement. And I really wanted to understand the logic behind Khmer Rouge. I want to know, what were they trying to do? So I have been reading a lot of Pol Pot lately because I mean, the right wing's over, man. It's done. It died. It died. It died when Trump got reelected. Basically.
How do you respond to criticisms, Panama Hat, of me and people who think like us, that all you are at the end of the day is a coffee shop hipster?
I see. The thing is, I think we're too far ahead of the curve to be hipsters. To be like, if we were being hipsters, we'd be like, it just doesn't seem quite right. Especially because also, I mean, I'm speaking of myself, but I mean, it is genuinely. I want to move on to the next intellectual trend, and I think you have to go through leftist thought to find it, because we basically exhausted right-wing intellectual thought to a certain extent. Kind of what it means to even be right-wing is thrown into question because, well, I mean, for me, you can't. There isn't any point in doing any of this if you're just going to rely on mass market capitalism again, because that's going to just lead to individualism too, isn't it? There's no point in trying to go back to any of these places. You don't want to end up like poor old David Starkey kind of going around happily going, well, we're going to return to Mrs. Thatcher under Nigel Farage. It's like, well, you're not going to do it. And if you do, it's going to get worse. Like, part of the reason we're here now is because of the resurgence of, oligarchic money in the 80s and 90s. So, I mean, at this point, I'll happily just go and read Lenin and just be like, well, how do we use this kind of revolutionary kind of totalistic energy to build something approximating a just state? I think that's the only worthwhile political project.
The I mean, the right is a toothless old woman, we could say, but it was summed up for me earlier on, right? Where on Twitter earlier on, I quote tweeted this clip of Tim Pool, okay, and it was Tim Pool basically about the ICE stuff, saying, "Look, I'm not licking the boot," says Tim Pool. "I'm not licking the boot. It's my boot." Okay. And I quoted that and says that this is just pathetic. This is truly one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen And this guy on Twitter called this just sums everything up. Casual Male XL, his name is. He said, "You don't hate Tim Pool's position. You hate that people like Tim Pool now hold a position that you held first." Now, Panama Hat, as someone who's known me for a best part of a decade at this point,
Yeah.
that is so wrong. Where do you even start?
Well, I know, because it's. Yeah, we're in favor of kind of using hard power to achieve ends, and I mean, if Trump was genuinely going whole hog and saying, right, we're fixing immigration now, we're just starting, we're just going to do it. ICE is getting all this money and funds and all these new recruits, and we're just going to send all the Mexicans home. I mean, that would be one thing, but it's not, is it? It's this cat-handed kind of, right, we're going to send 12 men into a random city to arrest some Mexicans, and he's not even going to win on, like, right-wing optics. It's going to be this bizarre sort of, oh, we've killed a civilian again. This looks terrible type thing. I mean, and also just the idea that you or anybody else, in this circle was ever for kind of just incompetent use of weak force is just ludicrous. I mean,
yeah,
this is it. This is what you get being a public figure, isn't it? You're going to get people just throwing things at you with no real purpose, I suppose.
Yeah, if Casual Male XL is even a real person.
Exactly.
So this is the whole thing. This is why.
Well, also
you escape the slop right matrix, because it's just. I mean, what do you do with that?
Well, exactly. It's not something that can be really fixed. I mean, because it exists basically on Zionist money power. I mean, it's a tool to keep the right in a certain place and to make sure that MAGA gets its last gasp, because they probably know that Trump's the whole thing's going to collapse probably before the next election, if not during it. And they need to get their ends achieved, and it's that thing that Scrump always says: being the thin end of someone else's wedge. You dunking on Keir Starmer and saying, "Hey, Trump, come and invade us," is just feeding into that machine of okay, Trump's going to chicken out on everything except giving Israel what it wants. Again, that's what this presidency has existed to do thus far.
Anyway, let's have a look at some more. $11 Cheese says, Gandalf, sorry, not Gandalf, Bob Geldof and Bono both personify the anti-nature boomer lack of humility, and that we can do anything, repair the climate, abolish tribalism, post-war easy living, and Hollywood just fried their brains. Yeah, absolutely, it's very much kind of the spirit of the time. And you see, the thing is that like I still think the spirit of Bono and Geldof live in the heart of, like, you see these reform halls full of boomers and things like that.
Yeah.
Or like Hartley Brewer, or like the spirit of it. This is what I'm talking about, the difference between slop and actual authentic critical thinking, right? They wear the skin suit, but they don't internalize any of the stuff we've said.
No.
So in their heart of hearts, a lot of these people are still basically that, right? and it comes to the fore. I mean, you watch enough of that GB News or Talk TV, if you can stand more than 5 minutes, and you can see that it's still just really different parts of that original boomer mindset talking to itself.
They all fall back on the same priors. They never break out of that framing. I mean, they're never able to consider anything outside of that kind of wishy-washy liberal Englandism, if you know what I mean. And, this kind of, there's just certain things you won't ever go near. Like they'll always be up for, mass democracy. That'll never change. They'll always want everyone to have their vote in a system. They'll always want kind of the illusion of choice, the illusion of individualism, all this kind of thing. And the ultimate evil is always Hitler. There's that old thing. It's like, well, Hitler was really a woke leftist who was coming to take away our liberties, and that's why good old Churchill had to fight. It's that kind of thinking.
Yeah, or the EU is secretly like German fascism
the
again.
EU is Hitler. Yeah. Never goes away.
All right, chaps. Well, I'll thank you very much. I'm going to check out your video. It sounds like a must-watch. Maybe if I'll give it a whirl and give it a share to help boost your numbers.
See if you can recognize what some of the video footage is in it.
I'll have a little while. Are you on Twitter now?
I am back, yeah, but I've not. It's just
kind of sly. Okay,
burner account. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. All right, folks. Well, we got through a lot today, Simon. I'm pretty impressed.
Very pleased. Yeah.
The efficiency of Hack coming in. Maybe it's
there. You go.
I don't know if that was the difference maker, or did I deliberately just play it more and talk less today?
Maybe.
Well, we just didn't have that Rothbardian subversion, did we?
The thing about Horus is he's a right deviationist. He's a Bukharinite, and he needs to be purged from the party.
Oh no! This is into. You're like Barrier making moves.
Exactly.
Against your rivals.
Yeah. Just a quick free plug for one of our friends, Sam Art Dino at art_Dino on Twitter. Go and buy one of his nice prints. Do something for your artistic soul today.
Fantastic. All right. Well, see you all soon.
Bye all.
See you next week, Simon.
Ta-ta.
Love Horus. If you're listening, Horus, we love you. We
still love him. Yeah.
You should go back in the annals of the deepest lore. I think Horus's first appearance on the channel was when we looked back at Nightmare together. Do you remember Nightmare from back in the day? That was a good stream.
Yeah.
And, it provided lots and lots of colourful commentary on Kurto, and also brings up valid critiques.
Very much
often as well. All right, I'll see you all soon. Oh.
What goes on in this town is none of your business.
As long as I'm living here, it is.
Then maybe you shouldn't be living here!
Well, that's easily fixed.